Welcome to your Big Girls Attack on Titan podcast. I'm Momtaku.
And I'm Luna, and we have two returning guests today. Both fall on the opposite spectrum of a fandom. We have Safflora and Soul coming back. Safflora is our Eren apologist, Eren optimist. Sorry. And Soul is our Eren anonymous fan, I guess.
Closet Jaegerist.
Closet Jaegerist. There's a lot of terms here going around.
Yeah, God.
In case anyone is new to the podcast, Safflora was our guest for the Chapter 128 podcast, and she nearly convinced me that Eren had a benevolent or a slightly more benevolent plan.
Slightly less malicious
plan. So when this chapter dropped and, it was finally the Eren POV, you were the first person I wanted to have back. So welcome back to the podcast, Safflora. And I am really interested in hearing if you are still an Eren optimist or, how that's going for you.
Yeah, thank you. It is good to be back. Do you want like a one-liner, I guess, on what I'm feeling right now?
Sure.
Okay. I am maybe a much more cautious Eren optimist. But I think I am an Isayama optimist. So, so that's good. There's this lovely song by Lana Del Rey called "Hope is a Dangerous Thing for a Woman like me to have, but I have it." And I think that's pretty much how I'm feeling.
That reminds me of an ask that we got from Twitter's Ambassador Aguino. He said, "Did you ever doubt Isayama? Has your faith in him been restored this chapter? And what are your feelings about Eren right now?" So I guess coming from you, you just answered that. Your faith is there.
It's cautiously there. Well, we'll talk.
Well, how about you, Soul? How are you feeling about your closet Jaegerism?
Well, in retrospect, I don't know. I feel quite a bit of ambiguity. Either I'm a ironically closeted Jaegerist, or I'm just in denial about how Eren actually is and how I expect him and want him to be. I mean, we'll get into it later, but this latest chapter was definitely interesting. Eren was portrayed in a way that I found interesting, that makes him seemingly seem to double down on his worst traits that either Isayama is trying to convince us that Eren is still driven by hatred, and he's lost that sort of ambiguity that I liked in him. Essentially, I have mixed feelings, but yeah, either way, I'm interested to see where the discussion goes.
I'll second that. On my first read, so when we get a new chapter, I'm always just so excited. I'm like, please inject this directly into my largest vein. And I read it in like a minute, 30 seconds and don't actually look at anything, but I'm just like reading for the events of the chapter. And so I did that, and it devastated me so much that I could not return for my second read for like 3 days.
Oh, wow.
So, it felt awful. So it took me a while to get back to it. And then I read it again and I was like, oh, thank God, there's so much more here that's interesting than I thought. Yeah, so I haven't had a ton of time to actually like process it and think about it and read what people have written and that kind of thing. But I was happy to be intrigued, at least, when I read it again.
That's kind of interesting. I thought you would still hold on to the theory that, it would only be a partial rumbling. Because it could only be still that.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in this chapter that like made it 100% impossible for what I was hoping to happen. It just made it less likely.
Well, I mean, technically the events can still happen, but the intent of which those events might happen might not be what you want them to be.
Yeah, and the intent's what's important. But I think we see something else happening here that's really interesting to me, and it's kind of an idea that I've played with on and off for the last several months, maybe like almost a year now. And the last theory I came up with didn't really require much thinking about like Titan mythology and Titan powers and that kind of thing. So I sort of dropped it more recently, but it seems like it might actually be relevant. So I've been thinking a little bit more about that lately too.
I kind of like what Soul said, that he's feeling a bit ambivalent about Eren Yeager, because we did get a really nice comment for you from Jojo and Dad5. He says, if Soul doesn't see this, hopefully you guys can pass on to Soul that I think he made the best Attack on Titan character study that I've ever watched. The video titled The Genius of Eren Yeager's Character is beautifully written.
That is very nice.
It's nice, but it's also funny with, your Kieran
Yeah, just because of the meme,
Yeah.
just the genius of Eren Yeager. No, it does mean a lot getting comments like that. It kind of reaffirms that at some points I kind of, as much as I miss and get things wrong, sometimes I can hit a nail on the head when it comes to a character. But I will just add that since I've made that video, God, it's been like 2 years.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even since like my latest Attack on Titan video, just been like months and months ago, almost a year ago, like my perspective has shifted quite a bit on the core issues. Obviously, as a mixture of just newer content coming out as far as Attack on Titan goes, but also just from hearing new arguments and discussing the stories, my mind has changed and my opinions have changed on certain issues, including Eren. So if I were to make a new Eren analysis or something now, I'd probably have slightly different thoughts on him than, previous videos that I made.
So this makes me all the more excited to hear your chapter impressions, especially since your ideas have changed. And from Twitter, Monica So sent us that message. She said she can't wait to hear our impressions. So I know we've touched on it already slightly, but because this is our tradition, let's go ahead and do it. What were your initial chapter impressions? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let's go ahead and start with you, Sol.
Yeah, so when I first read it, I read it with a friend, with like that epic Attack on Titan Sawano Hiroyuki music in the background. And it just so happened that like whilst I was listening to the song in the background, it happened to, the majority of it was build up. And as soon as we saw like the rumbling actually occur, that's when like, the song reached its climax and like all the epic instrumentals like kicked in. And that has that just like it just felt like just a divine intervention to make my interpretation of the chapter just amazing, just enjoyable, all the more enjoyable. So like when I first read it, just the sheer spectacle of the rumbling actually happening was just kind of like I was just taken over by hype initially, because I think since the rumbling happened, I think I echo the sentiment that like a lot of fans were kind of disappointed that it was a backdrop. Like you briefly saw the walls crumbling and then they kind of just disappeared. And so I think this chapter was necessary to just see the colossal titans in action. And Isayama definitely didn't disappoint. We had like 50,000 double page spreads. We had some bird symbolism. We had some World War I technology on there. I think the ships that they're on are called Mikasa ships or something. It was kind of everything that I wanted physically from the spectacle of the rumbling. So when I first read the chapter, I'd say it was like a 9 out of 10. But just surely because of hype and the music and just, I was in a voice school just screaming with my friend because it was, such a climactic moment. But then now that I've like mellowed down, talked about it a bit and, reread the chapter, I found it a bit lackluster in some ways. We can get into that later, but as of now, I'd probably rate it a 6 or a 7 out of 10.
And Safflora, what about you? What were your chapter impressions, your overall chapter impressions?
Yeah, so on first read, like I said, hated it. Found it extremely painful. Couldn't look at anything related to Attack on Titan for several days. Came back to it a little bit later. I can't give it like a number rating because I just refuse to. It depends on how things play out, how I feel about the events of this chapter. But at the very least, it's interesting to me. It's the chapter that's given me the most to think about in a long time. And that's where I get most of my enjoyment of the series too. Just thinking and overthinking and picking things apart and coming up with crazy theories. So it's given me like new fuel for that. And I appreciate it for that. But maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I need to listen to music next time and It'll make it better.
Honestly, yeah.
We all need to get in on Sol's voice call and
Listen to some season 3 OST. Just when the bass drops in, it's just insane. doesn't matter if thousands of people are dying. You know, it's just epic. It's
when
epic
the bass
music.
drops,
just makes up for it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Luna?
Well, just like Sol, I was reading it with a friend. I don't know which version you read, but we read the worst of the 3 fanlations with some.
Oh God.
Yes. So we had a blast reading the chapter just because of like all the translations. It was like Kodansha at its prime, you know, like repeated speech, text bubbles, and the fan fiction of Historia wanting Eren's child. It was awesome. So yeah, I read this chapter a couple of times in all sorts of different translations. I'm not really sure how I feel about it because it kind of reminds me of my least favorite chapter in the Marley arc, which is still my favorite arc, which was where we see Annie, Reiner, and Bertolt break through Wall Sheena, because it felt like a lot of repetition and just kind of displaying what we already knew. And that's kind of how I feel with this chapter, although I guess we never really knew for sure, but I always felt that this was the way the story was going to go. So I felt, not a lot happened for me this chapter. This might have well been the Corona chapter. So, this might have been the Miss Rona chapter. I don't want to get demonetized, although we are not getting monetized anyway. But yeah. So yeah, for me, it's like I gave it a 3 out of 5. So I guess a 6 out of 10. There's some good part in it. My favorite part was probably the art this chapter.
Oh, it was so good.
There were 9 double-page spreads in this. It just screamed volume closing chapter. He always does like these he really focuses on the art in volume closing chapters. This one, I don't care what form you read it in, it screamed, this one closes a volume. And I do think that our speculation last month that maybe he's made the switch to digital, some of those panels I cannot imagine were not digitally done.
The Devilish Attack Titan, that one was definitely digital. And I'm glad he did. At least for some parts, at least, he's made the switch to digital. It really makes a good difference. It makes his artwork a lot cleaner, which was one of the main gripes I used to have with his artwork. It's like, no, there's too many lines. It looks like a sketch. So, what were your feelings, Momtaku? Did you enjoy the chapter? Or did you particularly enjoy the discussion that came forth from this chapter?
And so this one was a mixed bag for me. So like I didn't see a lot of, shocking new information here. But what it did was it shut down some of the theories that I've always thought were sort of like fringe fandom theories anyway, like that the Ackermans are slaves. I was so happy to see that one finally put to the death that it deserved, that Mikasa was a slave to Eren. I have been waiting for that, and I'm very grateful we got that spelled out and as plain language as possible for the people in the back. I was also hugely appreciative that Historia was not a Jaegerist. Like I know that the ending of that scene, people are choosing to read it how they want, but her reaction is exactly what I wanted. And it felt really good for me to be able to go into various Discord servers. I didn't do this, but I would have loved to, and just said, I told you so. But, and then the third thing that it settled that should never have been an issue in the first place was that Floch was only pretending to know Eren's plan, that Floch was had taken advantage of a situation, which he did, but that he was lying about Eren. And that scene, that got me. I actually felt sympathy for Floch in that moment. That was not the way I was expecting that to go. So in that sense, the chapter was really good for me because it just settled things that I thought should have already been settled. The discussion around the chapter has been incredibly hard for me, obviously. The rumbling at the end was fantastic. And Swimming Titans, hell yeah, it was great. So I'm also kind of in the 6-7 out of 10 range. I have concerns. I wish I knew, like Safflora said, I don't want to express full love for it until I know where the story goes. I don't want to get burned. So I have the potential to really love this chapter. Maybe that's how I'm going to go.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So let's go ahead and dive into our conversation. The first thing I wanted to focus on was the fact that it seems like in this opening pages, again, there's a huge contrast that's being set up. We have the opening panel where I'm going to air quote, the Avengers are talking. And, this is a group of people who are putting their lives, their friendships on the line. And Hanji states the reasoning as, we're doing this basically for complete strangers. We're doing this for people we don't know. In fact, they might have to kill their closest friends to accomplish this. And then we have Eren Yeager, who's doing the exact opposite. We finally see the rumbling, where he's killing an entire world of mostly strangers just for the benefit of a few friends. And I was curious what you guys thought about this. Is that a contrast that's deliberately being drawn? Like, is that moment, are we supposed to look at that and choose sides, who we think is doing the right thing? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I guess I'm curious about these people who have not yet chosen sides, or who have not yet made up their mind about whether the rumbling is a good or bad thing. I don't think there was anything in this chapter to make somebody make up their mind or change their mind if they haven't already, but whether it was a deliberate comparison, I hadn't actually noticed it. So maybe it was, but I was just a little bit dense. I spent most of my time looking at every moment after this part.
I think the difference in perspective is definitely intentional. As far as how it was portrayed in this chapter, I didn't really think that much about how, at the beginning it's Hanj essentially saying we're doing this for people we don't know, and then Eren who's doing it, killing strangers for people he does know. And I guess in hindsight that makes a lot of sense. I think it's difficult to talk about the rumbling. Because
what's so funny about genocide?
Exactly, yeah. Because you got to discuss these things very much in the context of the story. As far as my personal views go, yeah, I don't think genocide is good, but but
sorry.
Leslie is taking notes right now. He's listening to this podcast, waiting for you to say it, Sol. Waiting for you. Yeah. Everyone, all the Jaegerists are waiting for you to say it.
But as far as the context of the actual conflict goes, there's a difference in the numbers that they're killing, but their core motivations kind of remain the same. Insofar in that I'm of the belief that Eren's doing this because he sees this as the only viable option to establish long-term security and survival of Eldians on Paradis and not place the burden of this impossible problem onto future generations. I don't think his solution is correct, but I can understand how Eren thinks that's the only solution that's possible to go forward with to fix it in the rest of the 4 years that he's alive. Whereas the dichotomy of the alliance, I also think they're justified.
Long story short, you're confessing to being a Brexiter.
No. It's difficult to discuss the rumbling because I like to discuss it through the perspective of Eren, but I don't want people to mix the perspective of Eren with my own perspective.
Well, you laughing like a maniac while talking about it certainly helped your case.
I'm laughing because it's awkward because it's such a serious topic, and God.
I cannot believe we're having these conversations. Every time we get these chapters, and I have these perfectly sensible conversations with people, and I can't help but think, how did I get here? How did this happen?
Yeah. I think these moral problems are definitely supposed to make the reader think and, like me, feel awkward in discussing them because they're just so serious in their ramifications. I think I saw the difference between the two in the chapter, but I also saw the parallels between the two insofar as Eren is doing this because he believes that it will protect the people he cares about, and the Alliance are also motivated by protecting the people they care about, but they extend that to the entirety of humanity rather than just one side of it.
That's an interesting take on it as well, I guess. I don't think it was a deliberate contrast that was being drawn. It's just another summation of how the story has been playing out for Eren vis-a-vis his friends. So
I
don't know.
did see it as a contrast, as a deliberate contrast. I mean, and the other contrast that I thought was interesting was Annie basically done killing right as Eren's just starting his. Like Eren is just now starting his killing, and they're just tired of it. And it broke me. Like seeing Annie this month absolutely broke me. You know, I'm definitely team Avengers. I struggle every month to not hate Eren Yeager. So it's hard. It's hard. So, you know, I see them in the opening thing doing what I perceive as the noble move, you know, and just how broken and worn they are, especially as Hanji tells them that their families are probably all dead, which I don't believe, but you know, that is another topic later on. And we got our glimpse of Sleepy Reiner. So Luna, I'm sure you have thoughts there.
Was it Sleepy Reiner? What did I miss?
How would you describe Reiner?
I don't know. He was leaning against the wall.
He looked out of it.
Yeah, well, he's like sweating kind of out of it. He looks at Pierre and Gabby, who are just, well, Gabby's just traumatized. Isayama does that thing where like he draws the eyes, but draws like lines over the eyes, which just shows how dead inside characters are.
Yeah, so you had like Zeke looking really sad, Gabby, yeah, just in disbelief and shock, and Annie just giving up, and Reiner was just, you know, sweating against the doorway. And can we appreciate the range Reiner had this chapter? He held that pose the entire scene, and we saw him from 4 different angles. That was amazing. Like, highlight of the chapter.
Incredible.
Incredible indeed.
I mean, you could argue that was intentional because he's so shocked at the news that he just can't move. He just can't do anything.
I don't know. He only has like Karina left. And I don't know how he feels about his aunt and uncle, like, but I'm sure he feels bad for Gabby.
You have best mom Karina.
Oh, can't wait for her to get saved.
That would be the only good thing to come out of the destruction of Liberio.
Yeah.
Heard that. Oh, she will not be missed.
So does anyone here actually think Liberio's been destroyed?
Liberio, yes.
I think it's a matter of like whether Liberio's been destroyed, but also whether the people in it have been evacuated or not.
Yeah.
I'm of the mind that they have been evacuated because I feel that the riots that were briefly shown a few chapters ago have led to something. And I feel like that may be explained, that may be, you know, explored and shown off screen. Well, next chapter, and it happened off screen. But yeah, I'm of the mind that they did do some evacuation, but Liberio, as far as we know, is pretty much, yeah, trampled, rumbled.
Yeah. I mean, the water side looks pretty evacuated, except for the military. I feel like we would have seen civilians like running through the streets or whatever, but we only see the military. So
well, and it looked like the military was preparing for a horde of Titans, so they knew that the rumbling was coming. So they must have known, you know, through the Eldians in the ghetto.
Right.
Like they must have listened to them eventually. Now, how that all played out, we don't know. But, you know, Isayama can't give it away because then Eren rumbling Liberio wouldn't have that shock value.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll find out next chapter that they're fine.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had the technology to scout out all across the sea to see where the Titans are kind of coming from. So they probably, you know, got word from the Eldians all around the world that this was happening, and thus were able to prepare the military in advance. Because I think they mentioned that it's like not just Mali's military, but just like the military of the global alliance. And so I don't know. Like, obviously, it must have been previously concentrated in Mali quite a bit, but still, it shows that there was a larger cooperation here to bring forth, you know, all the defensive force that they can muster up, implying that they might have listened to the Eldians and their warnings. Right. So hopefully that means they were evacuated, but yeah.
Yeah. Let's hope. And otherwise, yay, Karina is dead.
I'm just thinking of the crab rave music right now.
I know a lot of people have had that outstanding question. Why did Eren announce it to everybody? why not just announce it to the people of Paradise? Why broadcast it to the poor Mox living across the ocean who are going to die? So I think that this probably feeds into those theories that, it provided them that time to evacuate. Of course, it also provided times for the troops to mobilize. So, would imagine Eren's not afraid of that. He's got the Colossal Titans.
Or it could have been a 200 IQ ploy to amass all the world's military in one place and destroy it. And then it's like, oh yeah, I've done my job now.
I don't think that takes a 200 IQ.
I think, yeah.
I mean, he looks pretty hellbent on destroying the world. I like to stay positive.
No, I was gonna say that's contradicted by the fact that the Titans keep moving forward. Yeah, after they destroyed the military, so he's pretty hell-bent on just destroying things.
And you could argue like, he warned the Eldians and they had evacuated, so he's pretending to kill everyone, but he's really not. He's only going through all the ghettos in all the world.
Yeah, it's like at this point, like those kind of arguments just seem like cope at this point. Like they're just in denial.
How you're holding on.
It's not impossible, though.
You're telling me there's a chance. Like
1% chance is still a chance.
Yeah, exactly.
You might win the lottery someday, Safflora. I think that's more likely.
Exactly.
If that's what happens, I'm going to start playing the lottery, I think.
Laura, your theory was that he was going to cause massive destruction first. It's not like you didn't think he was going to completely decimate, swaths of things. So
right.
I remember specifically you saying it was going to be bloody. It was going to be awful. It was going to be, you're not delusional about that.
No, there's going to be a lot of devastation. How long it goes on and whether he intends to go the whole way, we still don't know. So,
what do you guys think Annie will do from here on out? Because she kind of says I don't want to fight anymore. She wasn't fighting to save the world. She was fighting to go see her dad. And now that she thinks he's dead, what's left for her? Where's she gonna go? Is she gonna do anything? Does she have any role to play in this story?
Well, I think that there was a poll answer which was pretty much this, and I think the majority of the results, if they're still the same, was that she'll eventually kind of get over it and still fight for the greater good per se, and I think that'll be the case as well. I mean, her character has had a history of not necessarily acting in self-interest, but just being disinterested in the big global geopolitics of the world and just wanting to fight for her own well-being and the well-being of those that she cares about. And I think just her core motivation has been to come back to her father. So the news that he may be dead is definitely a massive blow. The idea that he may be dead or most likely is dead definitely is a hamper to her resolve. But I feel because she has rational, empathetic people around her that will help build her up. Whereas before, when she was acting as a secret agent in Paradise, she had Reiner and Bertolt. Bertolt was just, Bertolt. And Reiner was just, just being insincere and incoherent. So I think the fact that she has a decent support network around her, if that's the right term, she'll find her priorities. And it could always be that in the future, her father, after starting the protest in Liberia, he did escape. And there may be a scene where they're reunited and Annie gains her resolve back and fights for the greater good or whatever.
I really hope she gets that moment with her father.
I would love to see her fight before she knows that he's alive. If he's alive, which I think he could be. Yeah, I don't see her leaving the Alliance. I think Hanji's already talked her into staying and fighting, talking about Magath. That's what it seemed like to me, anyway.
Well, she was at least trying.
I'm actually surprised by the poll that let's see, we've got 1,200 responses now. It's been alive for about 24 hours. That 27% think that she will leave the Alliance. I'm actually surprised that number's that high.
Me too.
Although if she does, I expect she will reunite with her father. We'll get that emotional moment where she's with him again, because otherwise I can't imagine why Isayama would have brought her back after all these years if she's done already. I know we're going to get a little more something from her. whether it's staying with the Alliance or whether it's going to die with her father. I just can't imagine that this would be it for her.
Yeah, and I cannot imagine her getting off at Odia. Like, what is she going to do there? She might as well see this through to the end, my opinion.
Yeah, there's nothing else to do but fight at this point.
Yeah. So, turns out Isayama has been watching a lot of Family Guy, because I know because of him I've got the Bird is the Word song stuck in my head. Last chapter we had Falco's Titan. This chapter we have birds everywhere. Here's a bird, there's a bird. Everyone gets a bird. It's like the Oprah show. Birds. So, what do they mean? There's birds in the opening page.
What did he mean by this?
Why are the birds? Why are the birds everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, have you guys seen some of the theories? Or I know you haven't, Safflora, because you've been out of commission or you've been avoiding reading a lot about the chapter.
So I've been on emotional bed rest, basically.
Yes. Sol, have you read any of the bird theories? Like Eren is the bird?
Yeah, that's the only one that I have heard of. Okay. And I mean, no, no, he isn't the bird. No, I think the bird is just used obviously as, you know, it's a narrative device to symbolize freedom, live my freedom, and also just as a good scene transition. It's just like if you have like something flying in the air from going one direction to another, it's just a good like artistic transition to move to the next scene whilst reinforcing that freedom symbolism. So I don't think it goes much deeper than that. If it does, then I'll eat my shoe then.
I want to see a live recording of that for sure.
I'll tattoo a bird on my arm.
That might be a better alternative.
If Eren is the bird, yeah, I will tattoo a bird on my arm, but I doubt it, yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, you never do know. You never know with anything that's happening right now. But I did have a thought about the bird. Well, not so much about the bird, but about like kind of how the device is being used, if that's how to say it. But I'm curious, I guess, about this bird's eye view concept, especially because we have like the attack titan who's far-seeing, and the founding titan who's like far-seeing, can reach across minds, can reach into like another dimension, basically. I've written a little bit about how Ymir can kind of surveil her subjects. Like she can see what's happening out in the world. So to me, like in this chapter specifically, the appearance of this bird here sort of suggests to me this feeling that someone is watching. I'm not saying that the bird is like literally the eyes of Ymir or Eren or anything like that. I'm just saying it's like a symbolic suggestion of that concept. Especially like when we get to the memory shatter thing, we have that memory, I guess, of Falca reaching up to the bird, implying that this viewpoint came from somebody who wasn't really there, that we didn't know was there. We don't really understand how that vision came to Eren. I think it has something to do with Ymir. And we see a lot of other instances in this chapter too, separate from birds, where it really feels like there's some kind of visual implication that there is another presence there, like there's somebody watching. There's surveillance going on in some way.
That reminds me of like that weird panel early on where Eren sees Frida Reese very briefly, like, and that definitely was the impression that somebody was watching. Like that, that ties exactly into what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's kind of the vibe that I get. I don't know if the bird is necessarily important in itself. I think it's just like, if we didn't see the bird, if we were just looking from above, that doesn't necessarily suggest anything. That's just like, oh, the audience is seeing this view. But if you have some kind of being, it gets you thinking about like watching, the bird's eye thing.
It does feel like Eren is aware of the ship carrying his friends, tugging the boat. Like it does. I don't think that those panels are placed over his word belt. Like, do you think he's aware? Do you think he actually, using Path's magic, can see where they're at and what they're doing?
I don't know if he always could, but I think maybe now that he's kind of combined with Ymir, it's possible. And I have maybe kind of a wacky idea about the three titans that he holds and kind of what their powers are. So I don't know, maybe I can talk about that a little bit.
Well, let me just ask you this then. As we see that boat moving in those opening panels, do you think Eren is witnessing it, or is it just, here's a panel of the boat? I mean, do you think this is seeing them coming to get him what triggers the conversation? I wonder where it all started. Or are they a separate thing?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's possible that he knows where they are because of maybe specifically the Warhammer Titan. I'm not sure. That's like where I get a little fringe and crazy and like there's actually nothing really to support it, but it's just an idea I had. Maybe I should talk about that a little bit now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we know that the attack Titan can kind of transcend time. That's how Grisha described it. Transcends time. It can see into the future in a way. And physically, like in its power, that's represented by its like quality of always moving forward. And then we've got the founding Titan that's connected with the paths dimension, and it can like transcend others' minds and kind of transcend dimensions and stuff. And that's represented physically by its power of the scream and like its memory altering, that kind of thing. And then the Warhammer Titan, I think, is really interesting, and I want to know more about it. I don't know if we're going to get it, but like it has the power of manifesting physical objects, and it's got that remote like control pod thing that's suggestive of it being able to transcend space in a way. Like it's separated in space. And so I feel like maybe the way they all seem to have like this more immediate concrete power and then this more abstract like transcendental power, maybe the Warhammer Titan has something to do with like, I guess Eren having the Warhammer Titan, maybe now he can like astral project or something if we're getting real crazy. But, like I said, it's kind of out there. It's just, fun to think about.
I do think that's kind of what's amazing about this chapter is that we're this close to the end and we're still getting the ability to write or to have to, really put on our thinking caps and our tinfoil hats even better, because none of this makes sense. So we're having to come up with theories there are those that are going along for the ride, but for the most of us who've been following this passionately, what's happening here? And so I figured by now we'd be done with the theories, and we're not. There's still so much that cannot be explained at this point. So, when you propose these theories, I'm just like nodding along, going, that could happen. It could happen.
That's what makes it fun.
I mean, I will say like the whole birds thing and different memory shards we saw this chapter are rising, they're bringing up more questions for me than they are answers at this point. And I'm like, really? Mm-hmm. We're so close to the end. How are you still doing this to me? Stop.
True to form.
I think the most exciting thing about this chapter, like you were saying, is the fact that there's so much to theorize on. And Isayama dropping in the memory shatter, the panel of Bert and the one of Falco. For the portions of the fandom that are not involved in the shipping wars that flamed from this chapter, so much to think about. And I think we were discussing before we started recording, you really haven't had a lot of time to read ideas, but we've got the new memory of Fez-kun. We've got the memory shatter with the moment when Dinah ignored Bert to go for Carla. Like, have you seen any of the theories about that?
I can imagine what people are thinking with that. I think so. They think that Eren caused all of this to happen, or like set his child self on this path by orchestrating the death of his mother.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting.
I think because there was already such a twist with Dina, that's the right mum, being the Titan, that I think adding another twist to it kind of cheapens the actual reveal and significance of that scene. I think because the death of his mother was such a traumatic event for Eren, it makes sense that he'd want to set his life on this path from a hindsight perspective as an adult. But at the same time, it would make the nature of that scene, his mother's death entirely inorganic. And I guess that's kind of the question, whether it was all constructed by Eren or not.
Well,
I like the idea of his motivations being born in an kind of an organic way caused by the conflict, not by his meddling, essentially.
I mean,
at least his childhood motivations.
I mean, he said on the path because his mother passed, but like his adult self perhaps made that happen, which I think could have some merit in the sense that, if that all never happened, then Eren wouldn't have become the person he is. And I think parody would have been sitting ducks for the rest of the world.
I just think his initial trauma being so manufactured cheapens it, in my opinion.
I can understand that.
But even if it was orchestrated by an adult Eren, it would make narrative sense in a way for him to set himself on that path. But I don't know. I think I prefer it if his motivations were born as a result of conflict outside of his control, rather than himself, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also prefer that.
We got an ask from Kingsgrave on Twitter, who specifically is talking about this moment. He says, in this chapter, we see a memory shard of Bert from the perspective of Dinah's Titan. We know that Dinah, at the moment, ignored him and everyone else, going directly to Carla's house. So again, the question we were just talking about, is it possible Eren controlled Dinah here? But the one that I'm more interested in, how would you feel about Eren if this were true? And I think you already touched on that, Sol.
Yeah.
So what about you, Safflora?
Let's see. So is it possible that Eren controlled Dinah here? Well, yeah. You know me. Anything's possible. How would I feel about Eren if it were true? Sad. How would I feel? I mean, sure, why not kill your mom at this point? Like, if what you're doing is really what you're doing, like he's pulled out all the stops, he's gone to every extreme. I guess one more isn't all that shocking to me. It's a little bit disappointing, and it makes me feel like it doesn't feel like him to me, but who knows who Eren is anymore. So I think I'm with Sol that I prefer that Eren was not orchestrating things in his life from that point. I do think that Ymir is possibly involved here, kind of the way, I don't know, I think she's implicated in both the Falco image and the Bert Dinah image. It's plausible that Eren is controlling Dinah. It is not that he saw that scene with Falco. That had to be something else, because there were no like Titans or anything else there. So I think that's Ymir, and it makes me think that it's also Ymir kind of looking through Dinah at Bert. And I don't know if she could do that with like all the Titans, all of them being her subjects or whatever, or maybe she can do it with this one because it's royal-blooded and it's like directly one of her descendants. But if it was from her perspective, she might have controlled it, because we know all this time that she has been leading Eren to her for some reason. And if that was what it took to kick things off and get him on this path that led him to her, then that makes sense to me.
I was thinking about that post you wrote. Eren specifically says to Ymir, you led me here. And ever since I've read that, thinking about this chapter, I feel like it implicates Ymir as well. Mm-hmm. It just seems like Eren's whole life has been, well, obviously his whole life has been leading to this moment, right? And the death of his mother being such a critical moment of that. So if it turns out that it's Ymir who kind of orchestrated the death of his mother, I would prefer that over Eren being the one orchestrating it. But I do think, Isayama just can't drop panels there. And I mean, we got to get an explanation for this. I hope we get an explanation for this.
Yeah, because a lot of people have, it's caught their attention. They have, pointed it out. I think as far as the Ymir thing, as far as leading Eren to her, I always interpreted that as like she led Eren to him in a sort of, because she lived a life of constantly repressing her emotions. So the Attack Titan and its nature was sort of born out of this unconscious desire to escape those chains per se, and Eren happened to be the one to inherit it. And sorry, I know this is like entering like an entirely new topic and discussion, but it could be the case, and I could be wrong, but I normally just interpreted Ymir as having unconscious desires to be free, but never explicitly meddling in affairs. But if it turns out that she is like, she has some part in swaying the way the story goes as far as the Dina stuff, then fair enough.
I think we have one example of her explicitly meddling in affairs when she heals Zeke. She brought him to paths. And at one point, I thought that maybe that was just like his royal blood and it was like some extra perk of being who he was or something. But if you look back at like what he's thinking about when, like while he's dying, before he wakes up in paths and he's getting fixed by Ymir, it's the conversation with Eren where he says that he is going to be the one to put an end to 2,000 years of history under Titan rule. And there's something in the conversation that makes it clear that they need to be in contact for him to access paths.
That's a very good point.
It seems to me that Ymir is aware of these thoughts that Zeke is having and is like, oh, I need this guy around. I'm going to fix him.
Yeah, hence why, the Titan came out of the forest randomly and like, I mean, was it Zeke that ordered that, or like because Zeke was half a body, but then a Titan came towards him and like,
right,
healed him by extension. But I doubt Zeke wouldn't have had like the conscious energy or ability to actually command a Titan to heal him. So that was definitely part of Ymir's,
or the knowledge that was possible that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Zeke was just as shocked as anyone when he came out of the steaming Titan womb.
Yeah.
Healed again.
Right.
So
no, that's a good point.
So Ymir can intervene.
Well, and going back to our Ymir, freckled Ymir, her vision of paths, I've always felt like was Ymir intervening.
Yeah, me too.
Like, why did our Ymir get that vision of paths when she did?
So rather than it all being entirely unconscious, as far as the attack Titan being born, there are small interventions of rebellion for her position with her intervention with these kind of, little Titan, keeping certain characters alive, swifting certain events in a way. So that does make it a lot more interesting. I haven't thought too much about the ramifications of that, but that's still. I mean,
chapter 1, to you in 2,000 years. Could that be Ymir talking to Eren?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
We've still got our first mystery set up that we don't have the answer to.
Yeah.
But Eren is the child after 2,000 years.
There's also, when he's talking about, like, okay, where did this start? And we see that picture of him sitting under a tree with Mikasa, and then we see the pigs, and then we see Grisha, a young Grisha, at what I can only imagine is Eren's birth.
Yes.
So, obviously Eren can't remember that. So it suggests to me that there's some other entity either in him or seeing through him at that moment that remembers this like landmark moment of the birth of who will be the attack Titan or the destroyer or savior of something.
That panel was interesting to me too, because it was all about beginnings. And, the words that accompany it are, I wonder where it all started. Mm-hmm. And, we have our introduction to the story, which is Kid Eren and Mikasa, which was also his dream. How it all started with Ymir, how it all started with Eren's birth. And then, of course, how it all started with Eren kissing Historia's hands.
And the pigs.
The pigs, yes. The pigs started. See, we had thought the pigs started it all, but this is giving us competition there.
Yeah.
I really am impressed with Isayama pulling these moments together with the words, I wonder where it all started. Like, this was
and it just reinforces it doesn't matter where all these events are interrelated, interwoven in each other and have led to this current outcome.
Yeah.
I just love that aspect of just interweaving all these different parts of the story together to create a message. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that leads us right into the long-awaited Eren POV, which starts with the words, I wonder where it all started. Back there, it doesn't matter where. Even if all of this was set in stone from the start, even if all of this was what I wanted, it's still ahead of us. And that's just one sentence, but there's so much to unpack there because it introduces the question that I think a lot of us have been asking. Is this all inevitable? Did Eren have a choice? Is this a self-fulfilling prophecy? And Sol, it sounds like from what you just said, it doesn't matter. Like, it was all going to happen anyway. But Safflora, I think I'm most curious about your thoughts here. Is Eren an unreliable narrator at this moment? Is this really what he always wanted, or is he trying to maybe justify that he had to do it? How did you read this initial Eren viewpoint?
It's a really interesting question, and especially the thing about him being an unreliable narrator. I hadn't really given much thought to that. Well, first of all, I think the question of whether it's fate or a self-fulfilling prophecy is unanswerable at this point. The story may, in fact, be making the point that it is unanswerable. I think its unanswerability is exactly what Eren is unsure of and what has been torturing him all this time, first of all. And maybe for that reason, he has become unreliable. Like, I think we've known for a while that he's at least somewhat unreliable, just in the sense that his words and his actions have forced us to question when he's telling the truth. And now we've been given proof that at one point, like for sure he lied, like when he was talking to Mikasa in 112. So he is a liar at some points. That's not from a first person thing. From a first person perspective, I think it's unclear whether he's a reliable or unreliable narrator. But the fact that he opens his narration with a question, with his own uncertainty, I think makes it plausible. I think he's been unsure of what he actually wants for a long time. And I really like that. I love that, because like even that word want can be an extremely tricky word for somebody whose sense of self is compromised. I'm starting to think, like just in the last couple of days here, that that's really where the story could be going. And I would be excited to see it explore that concept of just like, what is a self? Where does a will come from? And how much control do we really have over our minds? For anybody who's like aware of having a mind separate in some way from their self, it can be confusing to know where the will toward anything is coming from and how much of it really belongs to you or whatever part of your consciousness you perceive that you to be, like how much you're actually in control of yourself.
Especially with Eren.
Like he literally contains other entities too, like several of them.
Yeah.
So I think that's really like an extreme representation of that phenomenon that a lot of people experience. Mm. I think that there's a reason at this part where he's like considering this, that we get another glimpse of his horrified face at that moment of revelation. It's to remind us that he was horrified, that he saw something that part of him at that moment did not want. It's possible that since that time, he's been convincing himself that the future he saw is what he wanted in order to defend himself from like feelings of powerlessness in the face of like an unchangeable future. I think we've seen him struggle with that. I think some of the views that we get of Eren in this chapter kind of suggest this concept of like self-alienation and depersonalization, and compare that with Reiner, who we know experienced depersonalization. I don't think that's what Eren was consciously referring to when he told Reiner that he's the same as him, but I think we've been invited to find as many comparisons between the two or parallels as we can, and that's potentially one of them. That's just the development of this extreme psychological defense mechanism in the face of some kind of trauma. Like he's got his own type of fractured mind going on, possibly. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Well, to me it does. Those are like really good points. And it's stuff that I haven't actually thought too much about, but I understand like where you're getting at. I also, like just to add on, like I did find this entire concept kind of like a funny meta commentary on how Eren is a slave to Isayama, because who controls the fates? Who controls the fates of the story? It's all in the writer. And so Eren, as a character, is looking up to Isayama like, please don't make me do this stuff. But it's like, no, it's already part of my canon. So you're going to have to follow it, mate. And he's like, oh, God. So, yeah. But yeah, it's very interesting. I wish I actually wrote some more extensive note on this theme of is it predeterminism or determinism or whatever, because I think it's a really interesting concept, especially with the, I forgot what chapter it was revealed of the Attack Titan's true power, but that's kind of been in the consciousness of the fan base, whether all this was preordained or not. And I really like themes like that. I think it's interesting. And if you look at Eren's character through that perspective, that he wasn't necessarily forced to follow these flows of events, but he kind of was. It could ease it could ease one's moral disgust at his current actions, if that makes sense. But but at the same time, I haven't given this enough thought, and it's quite a deep subject, so I kind of feel bad that I can't give a deeper answer. But I think Safflora's kind of
sorry to just spring enough, like that.
Yeah.
You're getting another video out of this.
Yes. Do it.
Isayama is the monster of the story now. God.
As long as you release it before Kanye West becomes president.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I actually like the theory that Eren set everything in motion, because if he hadn't been the person he was today, and if those events hadn't happened to, in his childhood, then Pleiades would never have changed, and they would have never known about the outside world, and they would have just waited for them to come and take their resources and basically exterminate everyone on the island. So, him kind of nudging Dinah towards his mother might have been like, well, she's going to die anyway if I can save the rest of the population by doing this. I mean, I don't think that's the case, but I would kind of like it in a way if he had some sort of hand in it. But then you guys also mentioned Ymir also saving Zeke. I think she's trying to claw her way out of this eternal doom dimension, because she's been stuck there for 2,000 real world years, but we all know that time there passes super slowly. She must have been going mental, all alone, just sand to play with, and an occasional royal family member who comes to say hi, and that's it.
Yeah, I like it when you think deeper about this stuff. It just shows it just brings up so many doubts. It just brings forth the ambiguity of Eren's character, insofar as is he the way he is because he was born that way, either, I don't know, the freedom gene, the shonen protagonist gene, or is he that way because he intervened in his life, or is it both, or is it fates it's the forces out of his control?
That's what I think as well. Even if he, Ymir or other forces that may or may not be are involved, even if he influenced his childhood self from the future, he still is who he is. Any other child might have reacted completely differently to that traumatic event. But he was, he turned that way because he is that way. So it all plays together. It's not just one singular answer.
Yeah, it's both. I'm thinking back to the scene. I'm not sure if this was before even Armin showed Eren the book that had facts about the outside world in it. Mm-hmm. When Eren was killing those two men.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be representative now of how he's always been this way since he was born, how he's always been different in, the levels of his resolve and the lengths he's willing to go for his ideals. And so is he that way because he's just born that way? It's interesting. The portraying Eren this way is definitely intentional.
Oh yeah.
At post time skip, the main interest of his character lies in his ambiguity.
Yeah.
And how we're grappling for answers.
We're just all trying to eat the little breadcrumbs Isayama lays out for us. And hoping there's not like some wicked witch at the end of the path with a big ass elephant.
Because that's why even Eren fans, there's such a diversity of opinion. It's like, oh, he's always been this way, like he's doubling down on his worst aspect. It's like, no, he's actually really deep and nuanced. No, he views characters like this way. Oh no, but he's a slave to fate. And it's like, all these differences in opinion. It's interesting.
I do think when I listened back to that 112 podcast that we recorded with you, Sol, and we were all very adamant on the fact that we desperately wanted Eren to be free will, that, he does do what he wants. He is making in control. He is making the decisions. Like, that's the whole point of his character, is that he is freedom. But thinking about it now and what we're seeing and how fate keeps being brought up, even Eren himself here saying, where did it start? It doesn't matter, that this was inevitable. So his own admittance that maybe there is no freedom. And it reminds me of like Erwin, his whole thing was to find the truth. And of course, we had Kruger step in and say, really, what is the truth? There is no truth. Truth doesn't exist. And now we have Eren, Mr. Freedom. It didn't matter how this began. It was inevitable. Is it going to be that there is no freedom? Is Eren going to be the one to realize there is no freedom? Or is the point of his story that there is no absolute freedom?
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially as before in 112, I was very adamant that the entire purpose of his character is, he's entirely free will, the embodiment of freedom, and he'll just go to any lengths. He just has a resolve that most characters don't, and he'll go to any length to pursue that ideal out of his own volition. But all this extra context brings that almost into doubt. Not necessarily his resolve, but just the idea of freedom and if he embodies it.
I mean, can we go back to whatever podcast that I said that he doesn't embody freedom? He basically forced Historia to go ahead with the rumbling. He was like, bitch, if you don't like it, I'll memory wipe you. There were some people saying that I wouldn't know freedom if it hit me in the face, but apparently freedom is like you having the freedom to make people do whatever you want.
I don't know if that's what he meant there. Well, I mean, okay, that's how I read it, like the first 4 times I read it. And then like the 5th time, he's like, if it's too much for you to endure, I'll manipulate your memories with the founding titan's power if you can just stay quiet until then. So if you can stay quiet until then. So he expects her to go along with it. And then if it's too emotionally difficult for her, he can like ease her suffering with the founding titan's power.
That's a very optimistic way of reading that scene.
Well, I mean, it says if it's too much for you to endure.
I mean, she already said that she wasn't on board with it and that she didn't want to do it. And then he's like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And if you can't deal with it, I'll just, make sure.
Well, and not only to follow it up with, and you're going to help me because you're the worst girl in the world and this is all your fault anyway.
Yeah. So. And that's one that I'm like, I don't understand that.
But I thought that line was kind of cute. I thought that line was cute. I don't know, like when I was reading it the first time with my friend, like, because you're the worst girl in the world, I was like, that's a wholesome callback.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Are you single?
No. If you have enough charm, you can pull it off. But I don't think Eren has that charm.
I mean, I don't think he's projecting charm through his eyes in that picture.
Let's bookmark the conversation with Historia, because that's going to be such a big topic to unpack.
Yeah.
Let's break into the 2 smaller conversations that happened first. And these were also ones that I was, really excited to see. And the first one was with Yelena. And I don't know about you guys, but I was expecting more from that. And I think because maybe I was a little bit of an Eren optimist, I was hoping that she sort of like twisted his arm into or forced him into a corner or somehow set the ball in motion that he had to do these horrific things. And the conversation was like none of that. It was just her apparently being very honest and open. Unless there's more coming, I was not under the impression that he was arm twisted into this situation.
Definitely not. Yelena's a nobody. I love her. I enjoy her a lot, but she's a nobody. Like, she has nothing to do with what Eren wants to do. Eren has been on his own with him and his titans and whatever forces are working at this, and it's just between them. I never expected anything from that Yelena conversation.
I think Yelena is only so enthusiastic to Eren because Zeke likes him. So, she even says, like, her last line, Zeke believes in you. You should do the same for him. Like, it's all about Eren is just a proxy for her to impress Zeke, essentially. So, it fits with her character, in my opinion, to be so excited and enthusiastic about sharing her plan. So, yeah.
It's been obvious that Eren's kind of been set on this bed ever since he kissed Historia's hand. So I feel like now we know that whatever Yelena said couldn't have held that much weight. So I'm not surprised that the conversation went this way. She's being like, oh, great Zeke, my God, please follow him. And he's like, yo, Floch, let's kill everyone. But hush. And I'm like, okay. That was actually the more interesting conversation of the two, the one he had with Floch. Because I did not expect that reaction from Floch at all. And I must say, I gave him a lot of hate last podcast, which I felt I deserved, but I feel like this chapter you finally felt human again. So, yeah, I really enjoyed Floch this chapter.
Same. I mean, he did ultimately go along with what Eren said. He was like, oh man, that's intense, but yeah, sure, let's bring ruin to the world.
Yeah, I mean, Floch was shown, like, Eren was giving him orders, and then he replied, and as we're doing that, what do we really do? And, like, it's shown that he kind of lacks direction and lacks resolve. So perhaps Eren took that as, like, okay, I really need to, like, amp him up right now so he's not a floating balloon. So I'll just, say this in the most blunt way possible. I'm going to kill all those animals or whatever. So it could, I mean, I know that's a charitable interpretation, but he could have, said things bluntly in that way as a means to amp up Floch's resolve and set him on the path that make him play the role that he needed him to play, essentially.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. I mean, Eren heard him on the rooftop of Shiganshina saying that he believes he is still alive because his role is to bring the devil back, because the devil is the only one that can lay waste to the Titans. And so he's like, Floch wants to bring the devil back. I'm going to be that devil. I'm going to get him in my corner, and he's going to do what I need him to do.
And I saw his shock as, like, shock, but shocked because he's just so excited in a twisted way, just at the prospect of maybe seeing some Erwin in Eren being revived again.
Yeah, I see him thinking, this is the terrifying devil we need.
Oh, really? I didn't see that at all in his face. I just saw him, like, genuinely shocked.
Oh, he's shocked. Like, it's kind of a horrifying
but not like
thing.
A happy...
I don't think he's happy. I think he's...
Oh, no, I kind of, I didn't necessarily mean, like, he's happy, but more like he's shocked, and then he comes to the revelation that this is what he believes the world needs. Enthusiastic has, like, a happy connotation, but you know what I mean? Like, he
the last panel, that's like him being like, oh, this could actually work to our advantage. This is a good idea. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I still read him as, like, is he serious? Is he still all there? That was my interpretation of that.
Well, I mean, he ultimately does go along with it.
Yeah, so your interpretation makes more sense where Floch is right now in the story, but God, Eren's eyes in that panel.
So Flora, when we last recorded with you, I was very adamant on the topic. Why would Eren pick Floch Forrester of all people? And it's something we waffled on. And I don't know if it's deliberate or not, or if I'm reading too much into it, but in this chapter, we almost get the answer to that. He overheard Yelena and Eren talking. Like, Yelena is clearly not the brightest bulb in the head.
Did he overhear?
I mean, it looks like it. If you look at the chapter, as Yelena is telling Eren what he's doing, Floch is right there. Like he's in Eren's room hanging out with him or something.
He's eavesdropping on them. Yeah.
In the first panel, Floch is in his Survey Corps uniform as he's definitely side-eyeing the conversation. Whether he's in earshot or not, I don't know. But it must be later in the evening because he's out of his jacket. They're sitting together again, and Eren, it seems as though he's addressing the fact that Floch heard this conversation. And he's just saying, look, here's what we're going to do. So I'm curious about that. Like, was Floch just happened to be the person there, or why were they together in the first place? Like, why was Floch in Eren's room listening to this conversation? Were they already sort of team players before this even began?
I think he was already kind of helping Eren. Eren brought him along to this meeting, and kind of like posted him outside, maybe with the intention that like he would hear what was going on, just like to keep him informed.
Okay.
That's just, I don't know, the vibe.
So you think it was he'd chosen Floch to overhear, maybe to give him a sense of like the danger that they were under? I don't know. It's interesting that Floch was listening to Yelena's conversation.
Yeah, I think Eren meant for him too. I think he brought him along intentionally. I think that he already was working with Floch in some capacity and intended to like expand that.
So Floch was already his right-hand man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was the person closest around him who had the right temperament for, with his sympathies to bringing the devil back. Like he had the right mindset and temperament to be Eren's +1, right. Essentially. So I think, and from the dialogue, so you see Floch like overhearing their conversation, and the dialogue after their conversation is, I'll follow Zeke's plan in appearance only, you do the same. Like there seems to be like already like a familiarity in motivations between the two.
It's just funny because we did ask in the chapter 125 poll when Floch made that big announcement, Eren Yeager told me. Nobody wanted to believe that. We asked in the poll, was Floch telling the truth there in 125? And at that point, only 5.6% believed that Eren told Floch everything. A good chunk of the fandom thought that Floch was just BSing to make himself look more important. So it's just funny how wrong we get.
I still don't think he told him everything.
Well, okay. Well, 60% did say he told him a fair bit, but not everything. It seems like Floch certainly got the broad strokes of what was going to happen here.
There is like Titan nonsense going on that Floch doesn't need to know anything about.
Yeah, the predetermined stuff, like he doesn't need to know all the memory shards and stuff. Like, I don't think he knows that.
I think he must have picked Floch because Floch had the right temperament. Like, he must have already decided that Floch was going to be his right-hand man.
Because it shows that Eren did listen to him in the what's it called? The
Return to Shiganshina?
The Serembol, yeah. Shows that Floch's words there did have some effect on Eren in truly understanding the nature of his character, well, Floch's character. So yeah,
this did make me a little more sympathetic to Floch, and I still hate the guy, but at least I understand a little more now how he ended up where he is in this situation, being who he is. So I wasn't expecting this flashback, but I was happy for it. Did you feel sympathy for him, Luna?
Sympathy? No, why would I feel sympathy?
Oh, I don't know. But he became more human to you.
Yeah, he reacted like an actual human being instead of like this weird extremity, like either he's like little bitch or he's this mastermind supreme ruler. Like this was human Floch. This was a natural. This was the Isayama writing characters in a way that I love. And I missed that for a while. So I was very happy to see him like this.
I think it shows the difference between how characters act in a private, trustworthy discussion and out in public to the world. Like Floch definitely has the resolve and believes his actions are the right ones and that he's justified, but he's definitely, bigging up his persona for the public, essentially. I do also think it's kind of an irrelevant point, but as far as like Floch having this temperament in the first place, I definitely think yeah, it all stemmed from the suicide charge and how he was supposed to die then, but survived. And maybe it's some form of attachment to Erwin and survivor's guilt that you know, shaped him this way. Yeah.
Can we blame this all on Erwin, please?
All right. Shall we do this? Shall we get into the Historia conversation?
Okay, let's do that. So before we head into our next topic, Momtaku prepared a little quickfire for us this time around. So let's hear it.
Yeah. So I have, like, Safflora, I think I've read everything you've written. And so I've talked to you plenty, but I've never, like, I don't know how you would answer these questions. And I thought before we get into the Historia part, I would just like you to answer yes, no, or I don't know to just 3 questions.
I'm scared. The answer's going to be I don't know to all of them. I know it.
No, come on. You guys can do this. So before we get into the Historia topic, yes, no, or I don't know. The order is going to be Safflora, and then Sol, and then Luna. And I'm pretty sure everyone knows where I stand on these things, but I will answer as well. So the first question, is this pregnancy authentic?
Probably.
Yes.
Yes.
Full stop.
And my answer is still no. I'm
Reaching through our screen,
still on the
trying
train.
to strangle us.
Okay. At the end of this chapter is the indication that Historia is supporting Eren. Yes, no, or I don't know.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No. Okay, last question. Is Eren Jaeger the baby daddy? Your answers, please.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yes.
Oh! No.
Okay, and of course I am a no on that too. So we will discuss this further after the break.
See you in a few.
Oh my God.
Hi everyone, welcome back. So finally, we're treading into our most dreaded topic of this podcast, maybe of all our podcasts, Eren's conversation with Historia. Now, I know where Momtaku stands on this. She is still very much the pregnancy is a ruse. And she did not particularly care for their conversation this chapter. So Flora and Sol, what were your thoughts on Eren and Historia's conversation? And I'd like to start with Safflora.
Oh, starting with me. Huh? Okay. So I kind of hated it, but I'm mostly just confused about a few things. First of all, like, aside from the content of the conversation, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was how it's visually presented, just like where we're standing, how we see the characters. It like really struck me that we're looking at their backs like the whole time and that their faces are obscured very purposely for most of it. For me, that kind of, it was consistent with the thought that I've had about the, like, somebody watching, like there's another entity present here. And it makes me feel uncertain about whose motivations and will are being expressed. But, you know, maybe I'm just making excuses because otherwise this scene really sucks. But, okay, I guess the thing that's kind of odd to me, or another thing that stood out to me at least, was that Eren's enormous problem specifically with the, like, parents eating, or children eating their parents, and like children being born for a purpose and that kind of thing. After I started thinking about that whole Ymir thing that I've been on endlessly in like every single one of my answers here. I was like, that sounds like a very Ymir kind of concern to have. I mean, it should concern anybody, but it's so specific to Ymir's experience that I think that's why it's so repulsive to him. Sorry if I'm getting like super repetitive, just like Ymir, everything. But that's like just where my mind is lately.
The stories are definitely connected. Giving birth to a child whose only purpose is to become a sacrifice. I mean, that's what King Fritz, the original King Fritz, did to Ymir and her offspring. So
that combined with the way that they're visually presented, it just like feels very odd to me. So that makes it more difficult for me to comment on the actual content and like the dynamic between Eren and Historia and stuff, because it just feels off.
On Twitter, Ruby Gus asked us, not really a question, but would love for you guys to break down the memory panel's shards and clear up the Eren and Historia conversation in your opinion. So, I don't know that we really can clear up the Eren and Historia conversation. I know I have definite ideas about the flavor of it to me. Like, I take the whole conversation as being something kind of ominous and manipulative, and I don't see it as anything cute or nice, and I don't know that any of us here do. So you mentioned that this wasn't really, you didn't really focus on these pages even, did you? Or
well, I have discussed them to some extent in, I don't know, various Discord chats for what that's worth. But like overall this scene, like it had loads of mixed opinions, but the sentiment was mainly that people were kind of disappointed. Some were just frustrated that it was too ambiguous. At this late in the manga, we should be getting Isayama shouldn't be continuing this ambiguity, especially when it comes to Historia, and we should just get straight answers. And we didn't really like learn anything entirely insightful aside from just seeing her reaction. And then obviously there's the shippers who are like, very, very opinionated. I think when analyzing this scene, it's very important to look at the context of both characters. And like I wrote a comment that, I don't know, I'm kind of milquetoast on the entire thing, but I wrote a comment that kind of embodied my views on this whole thing. And as far as whether Eren's manipulative or not, my opinions could change, but this is essentially what I wrote a couple of days ago. So poor girl, this is referring to Historia. So poor girl, the poor girl is always burdened with decisions, undertaking many self-sacrificing choices she doesn't desire but follows anyway as it's expected of her. Ymir shook this worldview up, but you can see her resolve being placed to the test as she grapples with her role as queen, previously Krista, and her real desires as Historia. She's a character of contradiction who finds it difficult to act to her true will. Eren is one of the few characters who understands this. I know that's debatable. That's what I assumedly believe. Stands up for her self-interest, which is what I interpreted in the scene with the Hizuru negotiations, whatever. When Eren like that, he like physically stood up, like, no, I won't let this happen to Historia, and makes her more self-aware that she has the freedom to choose. If knowing the difference between when she's choosing out of compulsion rather than freedom is manipulation, then I don't know what to say. And so, I mean, you brought up some good points earlier that made me rethought this stance, but I viewed her initial repulsion to the rumbling as, it's a mixture between like authentic disgust at hearing this and shock, and also the quote unquote morally good girl kind of response to have, that
that's interesting. So you think
that genocide is bad. That genocide is bad. Any rational like morally upstanding person would be against this. But it's just because her character has been a character of, would she choose out of compulsion or out of her own self-desire? She normally grapples with these two things. And I wrote, would she choose that role because it's expected of her, or have those opinions because it's expected of her, because that makes her morally good? Or would she really desire her own self-preservation along with her island not being a baby machine, even if that makes her selfish? I think, like, especially the worst girl in the world thing alluded to the time where she was stuck in this role of having to act like the queen or Krista, and Rod Rice was kind of forcing her into the decision. She was like, nah, fuck this. Even if this makes me the worst girl in the world, I'm just going to put my selfish desires above the world. I'm going to save Eren, going to do my own thing. And so, like, I initially saw this scene as Historia feeling that she has to act a certain way out of compulsion, rather than her realizing that there are other alternatives.
Okay, so basically you think that we're seeing
Yeah.
Krista, a Krista-ish side, up until the point where he says, you're the girl that saved me that day. You're the worst girl in the world. And that's the point where she becomes
That kind of
Historia
reminded-
again?
Yeah, but then I can't say these opinions without realizing that there is an element of convenience for Eren for Historia to agree with his plan, and a certain sense of manipulation and forcing her into that response based on his rhetoric. So I mean, even the rhetoric of like, oh yeah, if it's too much for you to endure, I'll manipulate your memories with the founding titan's power. If you can just stay quiet until then. And like, you can interpret that as like, as a means for Eren's to alleviate the burden of suffering, but it's still like, it's under the presupposition that, yeah, she's following, like she should follow Eren's plan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult because I originally thought, okay, she's acting this way because she feels compelled to, but there's also an element of Eren's compelling her to choose another decision. So I'm thinking maybe out of, being compelled to choose one side or the other, maybe the baby, maybe that her saying, what do you think about me having a baby, is her coming up with her own sort of plan, her own choice forward. But at the same time, it's really ambiguous, and I honestly don't know. So yeah, my interpretation is quite charitable, but that could change.
Yeah.
If you disagree with that, then that's
no, I mean, in
fine.
true Isayama fashion, we get everything but nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, my reading was incredibly different, but I'm interested in like how Safflora and Una read this.
I read it as, pretty toxic and manipulative myself, and it was really disappointing to see. I haven't thought a ton about it just because I got held up on how weird the scene felt to me, and then I was basically just like, okay, well, there's more to it. Not everything has been revealed, so I don't even know how to go forward thinking about this until I see more.
I kind of had a different reading as well, because this chapter actually made me feel a whole lot better about the pregnancy. The panel where Eren is telling Historia that there's only two options. You can either fight the military police or you can run away, because otherwise they will turn you into a titan and feed Zeke to you. And she's like, no. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to run. I have my own solution. And that's where she kind of proposes the pregnancy. And for me, that's like, okay, at least with one plan or the other. Like, the MPs obviously didn't want her to become pregnant. Eren and her friends didn't want her to become pregnant. But this was like something she chose of her own volition, which that part of the whole thing makes me feel so much better about the pregnancy.
I'm sorry, I'm shuddering.
Yeah, I know. Bear with me.
Okay, keep going. I'm
Okay.
holding together.
Anyway, so and then Eren is like, you know what? I don't think so. This is not what I want for you. Your whole family did this whole thing where they had to feed themselves to their children. Like, I don't want that for you. And she's like, well, she knows that this is, she's the only royal left, and they need her blood in order to survive. There is no other way. And then Eren is like, oh no, there is. And I don't want you to go through all of that. So instead, I'm gonna rumble the world. And she's like, wait, what now? And she obviously opposes his plan. And then the question is, well, if he's going ahead and rumbling the world, why did she go through with the pregnancy? Was it just to keep them from letting her turn into a titan and eat Zeke? Because we saw in a previous chapter that she was okay with that as well. So I kind of think that, yeah, she kind of did this in the hopes of like persuading Eren not to go through with his rumbling plan. Like, if I become pregnant, maybe Eren will stick with my plan. And, you know, even though he doesn't want it, it's better than the alternative than letting him rumble the world. But then Eren ran off anyway. And so it's not better. It's not like she's doing it because she really wants to have a baby. That's not the case.
So I considered that. Like, okay, so before Historia had the choice of there's a chance I'm going to have a child who's going to help me protect this island for the next 50 years. And this sucks. And my friends are all trying to find a plan B. This is bad, but this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm going to have to give birth to a child. If they can't find another solution, which at the time they were still actively looking for, it's not forever. It's for 50 years until my island is safe. And Historia apparently was willing to do that.
Whether or not it's forced on me is for me to decide.
Right. So she's weighing the life of one child against the protection of all of her people, which is a decision nobody wants to be in. So now Eren's coming to her with the whole, well, I'm just going to kill everybody so you don't have to do it. So now maybe she's weighing the life of a child against the entire population of the world. And I was thinking about that. Okay, maybe she says, well, you know, if I get pregnant, I can save the entire world. Eren won't have to do this anymore. But the timing of that doesn't work. Like, okay, I've had a couple kids. Takes time, get pregnant. You don't know you're pregnant right away. I mean, Eren had this conversation with her right before he leaves to go to Marley.
Exactly. So
there's no time for her to get pregnant. And
well, maybe she got on it and then found out too late that she was pregnant and Eren was already like off to Marley. Well, Eren was off to Marley on his own, right? At that point?
No, he went with at this point, he and the entire Survey Corps. And if I could just remind everybody, they're on their way to Marley. They're still actively looking for a way that Historia does not have to have a child.
Okay, so that's before he runs off on his own.
But he knows at this point what he's going to do.
Okay, but Historia doesn't know that.
No.
So in her mind, she still has time.
I know you guys think fake pregnancy is crazy, but hang with me for a second. I do not see where this pregnancy needs to be real or authentic, especially since it's what Eren does not want. It's so much better if she's not actually pregnant. Everything about this chapter is screaming plot twist. Everything about it. Everything about the pregnancy period is screaming plot twist. I've written a lot about this, so I do get a lot of feedback, and there's plenty of people who think it's ridiculous, but a lot of unsolicited and ideas on Twitter of people saying that they never believed fake pregnancy until now. This chapter convinced them because it's so weird.
It is weird.
I could pretend to be pregnant.
Okay, I don't think you can pretend that for very long.
I do. Consider, the MPs have already been presented as being idiots. The only people that know where she is Niall and a few others. They bought the Nicholas Sparks love story that Farmer-kun felt guilty and was working around the farm. And like, they bought that story. Like, my 2-year-old wouldn't buy that story, right? But they believed that story. So don't tell me she couldn't fake this. And I'm also not convinced that panel where she says, what would you think about me having a child? I'm not even convinced she's talking to Eren there. She could be talking to Farmer-kun. Because we have that panel in 108 where she's having a very uncomfortable conversation with him.
That's what I think. I don't think she's talking to Eren. She's talking to Farmer-kun at the point.
And is it me, or does she have tears in her eyes when she says that? Because she's definitely crying in the scene where she approaches Farmer-kun.
Like I said, I don't think she wants to have a child. I think she wants the consequences of what Eren is going to do if she doesn't.
It just doesn't make sense to me that she would have a child to stop Eren when there's no way of communicating with him, unless Ymir's floating around sending messages.
That the weird thing in my story, I guess, that like, why would she become pregnant if she couldn't let Eren know, and why would Eren run off anyway if Historia had already become pregnant? So there is something that's not quite adding up.
When nothing about something makes sense, then there's more to it. I'm just going to go to the poll results here. So in the poll results, we asked, do you believe Eren is the father? And currently, they've been toggling back and forth here. Currently, yes is in the lead, 36% versus 34% no. So 36% think he's the father. But then when we ask, why do you think Historia is proposing a pregnancy? That same number is like, I don't know, man. They have no idea. Is it because she's supporting Eren's plan? Is it because she has a different plan? Is it because she's trying to manipulate him? Is it because she really wants a baby? Like, there's apparently a pregnancy here. And the fandom answer so far is, I don't know. So to me, if it was fake, if Eren said, just humor me. Okay. If Eren said, I need you to run or I need you to hide, but I cannot let you do this. I cannot let you interfere with me and Zeke doing this. And she suggests the pregnancy as a way for her to not have to run or hide. I'll pretend to be pregnant. You guys can do your thing. And then he has a couple of Jaegerists to ensure she stays silent. That works for me. That makes sense because it solves Eren's problem. Eren has a problem and it solves it without ruining Historia.
Yeah. Can I say wrong manga, or are you gonna?
I mean, I think we're all of the agreement here. Wait and see.
Yeah, something is not quite adding up. I'll agree on that.
It does feel likely to me that she has a secret of her own, or she knows something that nobody else does, or something like that. I don't know why, but I get that sense.
So going back to Sol's point about him thinking that it's Krista or a Krista-ish version, that's an area that I feel very strongly about. When she says that she's opposed to this rumbling and that she wants to live her life with pride, I see Historia on these pages.
Yeah, that is a callback to Ymir, right?
Yes, it's a callback to Ymir. I see Historia in this, and Historia, like the last time Eren brought up the thing about being the worst girl in the world, she's like, you're bringing that up again. Like, she said it in the heat of the moment, but maybe because it allied with his ideology so much, he's the one that caught on to it. So I just think that this whole conversation highlights just how poorly Eren actually does know her. Like, he actually thinks that she's this selfish of a person.
I mean, if you believe that, yeah, her first response was the authentic self rather than the morally upstanding character, then yeah, that line of logic makes sense. But if it's flipped,
yeah,
then if that was her saying it out of fear and compulsion to seem good, then yeah, I think this entire like situation is kind of beyond me. I haven't thought about it enough.
The rage I see when he proposes the rumbling looks like authentic Historia to me. This is Historia face, right? The angry eyes. When the panel where we see the "What do you think about me having a child?" with the extra long eyelashes, and that's Krista to me. That's not. It's completely opposite the way you see it. Like, that looks so submissive, so sheepish, so wrong. Everything about it looks wrong to me. It does not look like Historia.
See, because I always felt like after she became queen, she acted more like Krista again.
I think she found her balance.
Did she?
She understood that living your life with pride, being authentic to yourself, doesn't mean being a selfish bastard. It means compromise.
No.
It means doing things that you think are...
But it also doesn't mean like being the sacrificial lamb like she was as Krista. And she's kind of, putting herself in that role again. Also being forced into that role, kind of, but also choosing it.
She only accepted the role of the 50-year plan as long as it ensured the long-term survival of Paradis.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in a situation like that, what choice? There really is no choice there.
Well, Eren tried to figure out another choice. Yeah.
He made it so much worse. Oh man, somebody needs to stop this guy, He's the worst guy in the world. So the other thing that really bothered me about this is that, any other time he's talked about this, it's been about, stopping the animals, stopping the enemies, stopping, gaining freedom. There's been like these big purposes. In his conversation with Historia, he makes it all about her. I don't know, that bothered me too. I'm going to do this so you don't have to do this. And something she's willing to do for the safety of her people. I don't know. And even at the end, well, this is, you're going to go along with it because you saved me. It just feels like this is a different version of the story than he's giving everybody else. And it's one targeted to maybe make Historia feel guilty, to put the blame on her. I mean, those are kind of extreme words there, but this is so tailored to getting her to comply that it's hard to argue with somebody when you say, no, that's going to kill everybody in the world. That's wrong. You can't do that. And then they come back and say, well, this is your fault. You saved me in the cavern. It's just so manipulative. Nobody can convince me it's not. And whether he was deliberately being manipulative or not, I don't know. But this is not a conversation to look at with hard eyes or ooh, or look at how sweet he's being. He is not. There's nothing honorable about this conversation.
He's gotten very good at convincing people to do what he wants them to do. He's always been charismatic, but...
And what's crazy is everybody's blaming themselves. Historia is now blaming herself. Eren is doing this because of me. Mikasa is blaming herself. Eren is doing this because I didn't give the right answer. Armin is blaming himself. Eren is doing this because I couldn't find another way. Like, everybody is blaming themselves, and the only person that needs to be blamed is Eren. He's doing this. And it's so interesting to me that everyone else is feeling guilt when it should be him.
Yeah, well, I think that's explained in the narrative by the fact that they already have a connection to Eren and still hold on to the vain hopes that he's a character who you should sympathize with, and they've known him his entire life, so they're going to view him with rose-tinted glasses. And the final arc is essentially them trying to come to terms with the fact that Eren is no longer the boy that they think he is, and he really is as extreme and as blunt as he's giving off. They can't view him through the same sympathetic eyes anymore. And it's tough to do because they already established practically a lifelong connection with him. But I think it's a very human response to think that, no, he isn't actually this bad because my Eren would never do this. And like,
it must be what every parent or friend of somebody who does something horrific, like they're going through what parents of mass murderers do, or people that just commit horrific crimes.
Yeah.
Like, this can't be, they blame themselves, and then they say, this can't be that person. This isn't who they are. And
it's even repeated this chapter, like, Annie talking, bringing up the fact that they are on their way to stop and most likely kill Eren, because Eren just will not stop unless he is killed. I don't think he can be talk no jutsu out of this. And bringing up that point, you can see in the characters' faces they're also hesitant, and it's a subject that they don't like to think about, but one that they have to think about. So it's a really, like, that's what makes a story compelling to me, just this kind of fucked up kind of dynamic.
Yeah, Historia is not the only one being coerced into doing something she doesn't want to do, right? Everybody's having to...
Even Zeke. Shall we move into Zeke? Our 112 podcast did not age well, guys.
True. Do you remember what we said in that podcast, Sol?
Oh God, what was it again?
Am I the only one that listened back?
Probably.
I listened to it last night. I enjoyed it. It was good. It didn't age well, though.
I think that's expected, though, seeing as it's, over a year old, and like we've gotten so much new content and perspective shifts. I mean, back then we didn't even know that, aside from some vague foreshadowing, that the Attack Titan could see the future.
The bottom line is we all owe Zeke an apology. And we all were quick to blame Zeke for Eren being misinformed about the Ackermans. We thought, I remember at one point, Sol, you were saying that, you'd really hope that Zeke was authentically loving his little brother, and you just weren't sure about that anymore. And
yeah,
I was the worst. I hated Zeke so much during that 112 podcast. And here for the first time, like, okay, not for the first time. I think this is like the 6th time I've had to say this. I was wrong. He genuinely loves his brother. And Zeke Yeager is now on my list of people who deserved better, which, wow. I never thought I would say that, because I really thought Zeke was the villain of this story. And now Zeke is genuinely trying to be good big bro, and Eren's lying to him. Anyway, apologies to Zeke Yeager, and nobody listen, please, to the 112 podcast.
I find it kind of ironic that Eren is talking about how he wants his friends to live like long, happy lives to Zeke, who assumedly wants to sterilize all Eldians.
Yeah, and have them live long, happy lives, and then,
Well, I doubt the end of their lives will be that happy.
Long, happy, child-free lives.
Yeah, that's it.
Child-free life, yeah, well, I don't know. I think when the Eldian race kind of dies out and the enemy is invading, I don't know if that'd be happy.
If anyone saw coming that Zeke...
Like Zeke ships Eremika, who knew?
Okay, yeah, okay.
The ship is equivalent to what the Colossal Titan did to the Mikasa ship in at the end of the chapter. Don't know if it was intentional or not, but the ship called Mikasa was destroyed by Eren's Colossals and Rampage. So I think that's kind of symbolic in of itself.
Oh wait, he actually included the warship?
Yeah, like the warship that they're on is the same design as a ship called
the Mikasa, that which she was named after. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
and it's Eren literally destroying the ship through his rampage. So I think that's
wow.
Even including the memory there, I want them to have long, healthy lives, including in amongst that with the new scene from Fez-kun. Have you guys read the theories on Fez-kun's second appearance here?
I've read one theory from Crunch. He made a really good theory.
Which one was that? Go ahead and tell us.
Crunch's theory was that how the scene may play out. I might be misinterpreting it just off the top of my head. But it's like, Fez-kun getting bullied by the adults, and Eren's response to that is to just either kill the adults or just brutally attack them, some form of violence to throw the adults away. And he tries to convey to Fez-kun as well, that in this world you need to fight if you want to survive. You need to fight against your enemies. And the Fez kid's reaction is just one of pure shock and horror at Eren's actions, and it kind of shows that Eren's automatic responses to things aren't the only way, aren't the optimal way. Violence shouldn't always be the first resort or even an answer. There are other, ways to go about things. So it'd be interesting if the scene played out like that, where, the audience expects maybe Fez-kun to be like a little kid that, Eren forms a bond with, and it's supposed to show how Eren's empathetic towards the random civilians. But if he plays with that expectation and makes it to where Fez kid is actually like really shocked at Eren's actions and views him as a sort of like devil, that'd be interesting.
That's a lot happening off screen there.
Yeah.
I like the theory. Oh, I don't like it. I hate it. But the one that I read was that we know that Eren like saves the kid. We have the flashback from the last memory shard where he has his arm on the child, or somebody has their arm on the child, and the child is bruised but smiling. So, the indication is that Eren steps in and saves him.
Is he smiling?
Yeah, he looks grateful, doesn't he? Was it 121 where we get where we get the first part of this?
It's the one where his head gets shot off, right? Like where the memory shards and stuff?
Yeah, in that one.
Yeah, so is that like 119, I think?
But somebody darkly suggested that Eren then promptly has to kill him because the kid recognizes him and is going to blow his cover. Sorry.
God,
no,
I know.
I hate that.
I hate it too, but like, can you imagine? Like, because Eren's disguised as a Marleyan as a Marleyan soldier at this time, and then Fez-kun recognizes him, and because they can't communicate, they don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
Unless Path's magic can serve as like a language interpreter as well.
Oh gosh.
It's dark.
I don't know if we're going to get anything like really plot relevant with Fez-kun. The way I interpreted this panel here, like showing us this kid and then immediately after showing us Falco and Gabby tied up in the airship, is that we're talking about children here, right? Like he says, I want for them to live long, happy lives. He's not just talking about his friends. He's talking about children. It kind of reminds me of his conversation with Falco at the hospital when he's like, you're a nice kid. I want you to live a long, happy life. He's considering the next generation.
Yeah.
That's been kind of a consistent thing for a little while now, I think. And especially placed here in this chapter with this conversation with Historia about like a child and whether you're going to have one and what kind of world are they going to be born into. And that's all I thought it was there for. I thought it was just showing us a kid suffering in this hellish world.
And it pans to Zeke's face, looking all like intimidating. And it's like, how dare you bring up the subject of kids?
Yeah.
In the poll, 44% so far believe that Fez-kun is there to reaffirm the hatred that Eren needs to wipe out. Like seeing a kid getting beat up is just more proof that the world is cruel and needs to end. So that's actually the majority response to why Fez-kun is back. And there's the next largest chunk of the puzzle is that he's simply a device so that Eren feels an attachment to somebody he will be killing through the rumbling and feel remorse.
Yeah.
It is interesting because this kid is going to die according to what Eren is doing. I want them to live long, happy lives. Yeah, it none of this makes sense. So Flora, I'm glad you have theories because I got nothing.
Well, they're wild. We'll see.
It might just be the simple answer of just Eren having an emotional attachment to someone that he's going to kill, showing that, he's regretful and, well, not regretful, but that it's a necessary evil. And it'd be cool. It'd be a nice surprise if the Fez-kun kid has some depth and there's some like epic background.
He can get a spin-off.
Yeah. Maybe Eren will adopt him.
Yeah, but I guess we're back here to this like split mind idea, or at least I am, with the like obviously this himself killing this kid and the wanting them to live long, happy lives. It gets back to the complication of wanting in the first place and what that means and where wanting comes from. I think it's just another indication that he's struggling with that whole concept.
Yeah, there's the thematic concept of fighting to destroy what you hate or fighting to protect what you love. And him saying, I want them to live long, happy lives. It's kind of alluding to the fact that a part of Eren is doing this to protect his friends or protect his homeland or whatever. There are lots of contradictions in how, he wants to protect those he cares about, but it pans to a kid that he's going to kill. There's a lot of duality and contradiction.
Yes.
Do you guys have any thoughts about which is the strongest driving force? I know, for a while there we thought love for his friends. And then it was the freedom meme, that freedom was his motivation. And then this chapter seems to make it more about vengeance, or at least introduce that is also there.
Just in case people forgot, yeah.
Is it love for his friends? Is it freedom? Is it this vengeance for the enemy? I mean, what is driving Eren? I know the answer is all of the above, but which one do you think is the strongest driving force? Like, if you had to pick which one was like.
I mean, I'm compelled to say that he's doing it to protect what he loves and freedom. Yeah.
I mean, I want to go for that option as well, but then I see the goddamn devil show up out of the water and trample the world. Like, I'll kill them all. So this chapter, I'd say hate for the enemy, or I think the underlying is love for his friend.
I mean, that flashback was very specifically placed at the end, like when he's rumbling. They specifically, Isayama was specific in showing Eren where his trauma started and how he views the enemies as animals. That isn't necessarily indicative of Eren's current mindset. More so, could be argued that it's more so Isayama trying to muddle the water, or make you think a certain way about how Eren's thinking currently.
It's like he's trying to put us in Eren's mind. Like Eren is just confused. Eren is so confused, and he's making us confused. And I think that's the position that we're being put in. I personally don't see a reason at all to rank his motivations. Like, they're all in there. And I don't think there's one underlying that's stronger or more important than any of the others. I am interested in his use of the word animals, because he always meant it well, not always, but in this scene in particular, like after the death of his mother and everything, when he said that, he meant the Titans. He was equating the Titans with animals and wanted to eliminate them. Mm. And I still think it's part of his goal, maybe his ultimate goal, but at least part of it, to eliminate the power of Titans from the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of hoping that that's what he's referring to when he says that, because we had that scene in chapter 100 too, where he demonstrated that he understood, if he hadn't before, that everybody on the other side of the sea is the same as him. So it doesn't make any sense to me that he would refer to them as animals.
No, I completely agree. And some people think that Eren has devolved on that stance, that he doesn't believe it anymore. Some think that he's purely amping himself up by using that kind of rhetoric, so he has the resolve to follow through. I personally don't think he views anyone outside of Paradis as animals per se. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think he has that visceral hatred for the other. I think it's just a conveniently placed panel that's supposed to make us think that he has the visceral hate. Right. I mean, it's hard to argue against when he's literally destroying them, but you know what I mean? It's I think he isn't necessarily killing them because he views them as animals. Yeah. It's hard to explain. I really need to script this.
There's just so much being done right now to purposely create this like atmosphere of confusion around everything that's happening. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
Because it's very easy, like if I say, oh no, he doesn't actually think they're animals, and then you could just say, yeah, well, he's destroyed them. He's just killing the world right now. So, and it's like it's very easy to argue against. I don't know. I think the disjointed and contradictory nature of this chapter, I think, as you pointed out, is just representative of Eren's just collective psyche, insofar as it's just disjointed and contradictory. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's say Eren is not, let's go back to when he was in Marley and he said, like, wait, everyone on the other side is exactly the same as us. So to kind of reconcile with himself what he's doing, like, yeah, there are people who, I think should be able to live a long, happy life, but won't because of what I'm doing. Him calling them animals is kind of a way to dehumanize them and not be so attached to what he's doing.
Yeah, so he can follow through.
So kind of like hyping himself
that's up. An option. Yeah. Whether that's the truth, I don't know at this point.
I mean, I think, the fact that this last instance of every last one of those animals is monologue. This isn't for anyone's benefit. Unless the attack titan is different from... Unless the attack titan has a will. Okay, human Eren understands that people are all the same, but as the attack titan, they're animals. I mean, I actually, as much as I've hated those ideas that he's being controlled by something or that the attack titan has its own consciousness, that's the only way I can reconcile this, because for him to be saying that as part of a monologue to himself just doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense.
Yeah.
We got into a huge discussion of whether or not he was actually using the word animals or enemies, because all the fan translations had enemy.
Oh, I think it's definitely animal. And animals is such a specific word that he used in the past.
Well, it's like the animal counter, like the collective animals thing, right? Yeah.
Right. And it's the same word that Sergeant Major Gross used to describe the Eldians when he said to Grisha, it's easy, I'm not killing humans. So it's the same expression used now by Eren. It's easy, I'm not killing humans, I'm killing animals. And that's now Eren is using the same term.
The one instance I can think of when he used the word animals in reference to humans rather than titans was when, there might be others that I'm just forgetting, but the one that comes to mind is the human traffickers who like kidnapped Mikasa, who he killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the one time that I can remember.
Maybe in the attempts to understand Eren and not necessarily justify him, but think of reasons why he wouldn't be this bad. That we're just like the characters who don't give up hope on him. Maybe that's what Isayama means by hurting the reader. It's just like Armin or Mikasa. We're always trying to like rationalize why he's doing this. But obviously I don't believe that, because I think there are actually rationalizations that make sense and are intentional in understanding Eren. But it's an interesting thought that Isayama is like, even to like the kind of pro Eren-y people, is making us doubt ourselves, making us think like, should I really still try and rationalize him, or is he just, completely off the rails? So yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if we put our heads together, we could list out about 5,000 different ways that Isayama could be trying to hurt us. But yeah, that would hurt.
Yep.
That's why I couldn't return to this chapter for several days.
Yeah. Even just looking at the final panel. Well, first of all, just the artwork and the spectacle itself is just absolutely amazing. And it's just like, I know this is like a basic point that's been pointed out before, but just panning of just all the colossals destroying the city, and Eren in his absolutely monstrous, disgusting devil form, Eren monologuing to himself, "I'll kill every last one of those animals that's in this world," with those words panning over the destruction that he's causing. It's just so good. It's so good. As in, like, from a story writing perspective, obviously, not like a weird way.
No, yeah, I get you.
So we have an anon from Tumblr. So how are you guys liking Eren's new Crane Game Titan form?
Like the claw?
The claw. The claw.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I mean, with the strings attached to him and everything, how are you liking
he's like
Eren's
Pinocchio.
new?
He's a puppet on a string.
I love his final form. I love it. It's the creepiest, coolest thing. I have to tell you what my sister said about it. She said it looks like it's from heaven and hell, and she said it's the most otherworldly thing she's ever seen put to paper. And I agree with her assessment. She also, I don't know if this is going to mean anything to anybody. It didn't mean anything to me when she told me, but she compared him to Aldrich or whatever from Dark Souls 3, just in the way the human appearing part of him has been made into an appendage, and the functional and structural bits are the ones in control. Just like that reversal of roles. That's really creepy and just like super good body horror, like just really interesting design concept. When I first saw the puppet strings, it reminded me of the second ending from the anime, like the second half of season 1, because there's a scene in there where he's like strung up by muscle fibers like a puppet behind his Titan or whatever. But I also thought that maybe there were connectors like the Warhammer Titan uses, and that his body was like back there somewhere. That was my first thought. But I think probably the more important part of those is just like the symbolism, the puppet imagery.
What do you think is the symbolism of the puppet imagery?
Well, see, free and control, that's we can't really make clean distinctions between those concepts, because that's just not how minds are, I think is what the story is saying. That it's more complicated than that. But yeah, I think to me, it seems very clear that it's saying something about how there are other forces at work in him besides just his pure free will. I think the story is becoming one about Eren struggling with free will being an illusion, like coming to that realization, and that's kind of being symbolized here. Also, the shot where it's like straight on at him kind of looks like he's hanging in a cage or something, like the rib cage, I guess. So all sorts of like being trapped and being not so much controlled, but influenced, being not as simply free as he had hoped.
How does he move?
I hate that, because those there are no joints and no muscles, and those you cannot use those for legs, sir. I'm sorry, but I guess you found a way.
I'm just imagining like some colossals just carrying him. I don't know.
What do you guys think about the theory that he's missing 6 of the 9 Titans, and that's why he is incomplete? Like, if he gets all the Titan powers, he becomes, the best Transformer.
I think how he's designed now is intended to be his ultimate design. I don't think getting more Titans would necessarily change his kind of endgame appearance. I think Isayama designed this as the definitive Eren's final form. Just like how when Eren gained the Warhammer Titan, people predicted that there'd be like a difference in how his normal Titan looked, but there wasn't really anything but aside from the powers. So I think, this is just the definitive version. And I think it looks good enough, more than good enough. I think it's perfect and it definitely does its job. And it's the fucking freakiest thing I've ever seen. So, yeah.
The only reason he looks like this, there's no like reason. The only reason is that it looks freaking sweet. It's like the best Titan design.
And it does enough by itself. If you were to add more if you were to add more things that kind of almost not hide, but take away from the puppet symbolism or the cage symbolism, then that might take away from the final effect. I think it's definitely good enough now.
Yeah, he's completely integrated, right, with his Titan. Like he's not there anymore physically.
Yeah, I don't think he has the human form anymore. I think this is it.
Oh, that's even more freaky. I mean, I've always maybe, hung on to the fact that, maybe he is like in a human form just somewhere in the Titan. But if that is his literal only physical body, then he really has become the monster of the story.
Yeah.
No, it's really, God, it's horrible.
Link
the hair
in the
as well.
description below. Please check.
God. I mean, the hair in particular, I don't know why the hair gets me. It's
pinned straight. Like it's like something from The Ring. Like
but
it's
so like,
from the well.
Yeah.
It's
not like nice luscious locks. It's like really like straight, like thin hair.
Yeah. It looks like a goblin.
Yeah, a lot of people have been debating whether or not he has a Titan form or a human form anymore. Like, is he in the nape? Is he in the head? Or is this just him
he
now?
Doesn't have a nape. Like,
I know, there's
bones.
no...
Yeah. I think the fact that he is literally physically looking on at the destruction he causes makes it more impactful. Because it's one thing just to send the Titans out to destroy the world, but the fact that he's going along with them to either ensure that they're doing the job or, just witness just the end of the world, it makes it a lot more impactful. I mean, if I was a random Malian soldier and I saw that thing, I just try and have like a beer and just sit down and be like, yeah, screw this. Like, you know what? That's God right there. I can't fight against that.
The picture where we see his face for the first time and the Titans coming on shore, and it's like you see balconies and chairs, there's potted plants.
Yeah.
Like it is so horrific. It is so like this is just a town.
No civilians.
Living their life. No civilians.
Yeah, which is, promising. I mean, you could make the case that, this is probably the Malian part of town, so they would have evacuated the Malians and maybe not the Eldians, but I don't think that's the case. I think they would have, if they were to evacuate the Malians, they'd evacuate everyone, so.
I just hope Karina wasn't one of those ships.
Karina's at the front, firing cannons.
If only.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I mean, if Eren is the actual Titan, then surely that makes it a bit more difficult to kill him, or maybe not. Like,
yeah, that's the whole point. Like, how are you going to kill him when he is just made out of bones? Like,
because maybe if like he was hiding in a part of the Titan in a human form, then you could, as with most big monsters, you aim for a specific part. But like, I guess with this, it's like, would cutting the nape off like actually affect anything, or like I don't know. I don't know. There's no flesh, so it's weird. Yeah,
no idea how that's gonna go down.
How do you guys are Eren fans, how do you feel about this being his final, like this being your guy? You're that sweet little boy killing murderers at 9.
Yeah,
it's gross, but
yeah,
like I think if if the appearance of his Titan is symbolically significant, then I like it.
Yeah, I definitely think the symbolism is intended because most authors, Isayama specifically, normally intends his symbolism or certain aspects to mean something. He normally has, a driving idea behind it. So I definitely think the puppet symbolism is valid, especially when the Sawano Hiroyuki music, kicks in at this moment.
I hope he does the music for this part, because I think, isn't it like a collaboration now with...
Yeah, it's a collaboration, but it's with someone that he normally collaborates with. So it's, and they normally make really good stuff together. So I think it'll work. I hope it's some sort of like remix, not remix, but I don't
want a new theme for this part.
Of XLTT.
Yeah.
Because XLTT was made for the Colossals, and I think it would be fitting here.
Mm-hmm. What about them calling it the Attack Titan? When I read that, my immediate thought was, oh yeah, the Attack Titan is a conscious entity that has something to do with what's going on here.
I mean, was it real? Were they really referring to the Attack Titan though? Like I mean, in the official translation, yes, but I thought at first when I saw it, like, oh, they're referring to like all the Colossals coming at them, because that's also what Shingeki no Kyojin can mean, right?
Well, I think the fact that it pans in to his face.
They're saying this is the Attack Titan, and they don't call him Eren Yeager like they did in Liberio, when they were like Eren the Usurper. No. So everybody knows that Eren Yeager's coming. That's how he like introduced himself to the world too, right? He was like, this is Eren Yeager, I'm coming for you. They don't call him Eren Yeager. They don't call him the Founding Titan, which is what they were concerned about him having. They call him the Attack Titan.
Aside from it just being a cool title drop, I do like how over the series, the meaning and implications of Shingeki no Kyojin, the title, has changed. So first we thought it was like either just an English mistranslation of what Attack on Titan, it referred to just Titans maybe vaguely attacking people, and then it was like, oh, it's Eren's Titan, the Titan that fights for freedom, and now it's Shingeki no Kyojin is now associated with the devil and the end of the world and Ragnarok, and it's so cool.
It's very
how
cool.
The implications just changed.
Let's see, we did get a couple of questions in. One of the questions we got was from Kingsgrave. Eren fans insist that Eren has gone through character development and hasn't always been the same person, but Eren himself disagrees. How do you reconcile that? Soul?
So, I mean, in literature, there's, static or dynamic characters, and static characters normally are kind of one note and represent, like an idea or symbolize something. I think Eren is a mixture of both, if that's not a cop-out answer, in the sense that Eren is a static character insofar as he's held the same core ideals, freedom, this entire time, but his perspective around how he copes with his inner ideals, his perspective on how he views the enemy, how he views freedom, has developed throughout the story, whilst also remaining true to his ideals. So it's a mixture of both. If that isn't a cop-out answer.
It's not a cop-out answer at all. This is exactly how every person is. You have certain inborn traits, and then you have experiences that layer on top of those. Yeah.
Which, especially in literature, is kind of, I mean, it's not unheard of, but it's definitely rarer. You normally either have a character that sticks to their traits definitively without changing, or you have a main protagonist that changes, overcomes their prejudices or whatever, and the moral is earned through the character's development. But in Eren's case, he's stuck to his ideals, but has also changed his perspective around them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the scene where he is disagreeing with people saying that he's changed is, I don't know, maybe there's another time, but I'm thinking of when he's in Pass with Zeke, and he's like, hey, I've been this way since I was born, look, I killed these guys. What he's talking about there, the things that have not changed, that he's had since he was born, his hatred of oppressors, and his desire for freedom, and his determination, and his willingness to do whatever it takes. Those things have not changed, sure. But you're right, his perspective around like the specifics of the world and the conditions that he's found himself, those have changed.
Okay. But don't you think that this constant, I've never changed, I'm the same, is an example of doth protest too much? Like he's trying to convince himself that he has, I can't help but read this as an unreliable narrator situation.
I think it makes sense. I mean, if you just compare Eren now to how he was as a child, like aside from the superficial similarities, they're pretty different, in my opinion.
When else has he said that? I mean, I guess he said to Reiner, I think we were born this way, when he's talking to him in the basement.
Yeah.
But that's the only other time I can remember him saying that.
Just in the Paths realm, he said it, and then he says it again here. And it came up in the Mikasa chapter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Mikasa starts out by saying, you know, that she never understood, you know, that he's always been the same. Like, it's just this motif now, this entire,
yeah.
And I'm sure part of that is because, you know, post time skip, we're getting this completely different character in Eren Yeager. And the narration keeps telling us he's still the same guy. He's still the same guy. He's still the same guy. But in the worst possible way, he's still the same guy. But, you know, Eren saying it now over and over. It's just like, I think,
he's not saying it over and over, though.
I mean, to say it to Zeke, saying it to Zeke, and now his point of view chapter, I've always been this way. I haven't changed.
Yeah.
You know,
it's purposeful. I think it's kind of drawing attention to, well, you know, here's me with my conspiracies. But if in this chapter we were also given that picture that I think is strongly suggestive of the moment of Eren's birth, and he's like born into the world this way, and he's the attack titan. It feels to me like it's saying he was born with attack titan nature, like something of he's like imbued with something of its spirit or something, because his father was the holder of that titan. I feel like, and if they are going to keep like driving that point home that he's been that way, I think that's her purpose, and that's kind of what it's pointing to, possibly. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
I just think he's trying to convince himself that he has no choice, that he's always been this way. I think it's the workings of a guilty conscience, actually. I don't know. Maybe it's me. I would like to think it's the talk of a guilty conscience.
He hasn't always been this way, though. I'm just remembering the moment when they're on their way back to Shiganshina, and we get that kind of flashback to when Armin showed him the book, and he says, like, that's the moment I realized I wasn't free, and that's the moment, like, this anger kind of welled up in him. And how old was he then? Like 6, 7? So I don't know if he always had been that way, and that was just a moment that made it particularly pronounced, or...
I'm not sure if, like, when he killed the two kidnappers, whether that was after the book
that was
or
after.
before the book.
That was after.
So we have another ask from Paris, or Andrew122 on Twitter. He said, did you guys catch the Odin references? Eren blinds himself to infiltrate as one of Marley's wounded. His Titan form is the Hanged Man. Odin hung himself for several days to attain knowledge and power. So I'm going to just say right here that I have no idea about Odin, but I'm hoping Luna does, or one of you. I don't know. Luna, did you? I know you've mentioned things like this in the past. Did you see the Hangman reference or anything about Odin in this?
I saw the Hangman reference, but I felt like I can see why people would refer to it as the Hangman, but I feel like Bird's sleeping position was closer to the Hangman and made more sense. and Odin did blind himself, but he gave one of his eyes to Mimir, like to bestow infinite wisdom to Mimir. If you've played God of War, you'll know who Mimir is. But so
did he also have like ravens that kept an eye out on things?
Yes,
him? Like birds?
That's also it was ravens. Yeah, Raven is Odin's bird, and that's kind of how he has this
bird symbolism.
But that's also how he sees everything that's going on. You know, they're Odin's eyes, basically. So
the bird is Eren.
Yes, if we would go by that logic, yes. But the thing is, Odin would try to prevent Ragnarok. So, he didn't want it to happen. So, and I feel like if we keep with the symbolism, Eren is definitely going for a new world and the end of the current one. So, yeah. I mean, this manga borrows a lot from Norse mythology, and him blinding himself. Yeah, I mean,
That
it's
was
gonna
so
grow back.
okay. We didn't talk about that though, but that
I
scene
loved those
where
panels.
that
was really good.
We knew he had done it, but to actually see him doing it was
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, would he bite down on something when he would cut off his leg, or would he just like be like, "Nah, this is no big deal," and then to see him
I noticed that this was in the trenches.
Yep.
Most likely in the Mideast Alliance War, right? So that's very it's a cool detail. Just remembering, like, in order for Eren to be invoked into the Liberio hospital, he'd have to injure himself during the war for it to make sense. And I don't know, it was just a nice detail that added consistency to his infiltration.
You know what? I never noticed that. Is it possible that he is in the same trenches that
Yeah, I think so.
so maybe the memory of Falco isn't that far off if he was actually there.
Yeah, they're with Falco Gabby, probably further down the trench or something.
Wow. Okay. I totally had missed that. Wow. Okay.
Let's see. One more question left.
The pretty panel with Erwin.
I love that. Standing right behind his captain.
Like, Isayama's good to us sometimes.
So good.
Again, like with everything, there's a lot to love in these chapters and a lot that drives me insane. This was kind of cool because we knew Levi and Hanji were at the dinner. We didn't know Erwin was there. And just seeing everybody this happy, like, way to wreck us again.
There's one person who doesn't look happy in this, and it's Jean. It kind of jumped out at me that his eyes are all shaded over. Like, Floch looks all bright-eyed and happy and, like, part of the group, and Jean is, like, in his own little world.
We know Eren and Jean get into a fight sometime after this moment. Like, has Eren already ticked him off? I mean, I understand Levi being drawn with kind of like a little grumpy cat face, but yeah, Jean being drawn that way didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Oh yeah, who is the person sitting beside Sasha?
I don't know.
Like, I thought it was Hitch, but apparently Hitch wasn't there when they had this meal.
It's Armin's body double.
Yeah, it's Armin's like stunt double for when he's off screen.
It could just be a random other.
Some random, yeah.
Just to like briefly say, the ending, as far as Norse mythology goes, the only thing I can relate that is just Ragnarok. And I feel bad because apparently there's like a massive subtext of Norse mythology in Attack on Titan. And I remember someone wrote like this thesis on the Norse mythology, all prevalent through Attack on Titan, and like went really in depth. And I feel like I'm doing them a disservice in just looking at the Titans and being like, oh, that's Ragnarok. But aside from that, I don't know anything else.
But they wrote their actual thesis on it, didn't they?
Yeah, like actual university thesis on the Norse.
I remember that, yeah. I hope I can find it, then I'll link it. So we're going into our final questions from our listeners. Unfortunately, we got more questions than we have time for this month. So we want to say thank you to Honey Lemon, Ace1738, and TJ the Greatest for sending in their questions. But the next two are from Don Xabier and Fabio Tensi. So Don Xabier, or Xabier, I don't know, asks, after reading in the last chapters all persistent mentions of Mikasa killing Eren or allowing it, I wonder if that whole scene of sometimes sacrificing one precious life can save many others in Tross is a foreshadowing of Mikasa killing Eren. What do you think? And they included panels of where Mikasa is talking to Demo Reese, when his cart is blocking the exit for Trost during the attack. So, any thoughts on Mikasa being the one to kill Eren?
I think that's the cruelest thing that the story could do to her. I think it would be good enough if she is just able to sit back while somebody does it, because that has never happened before. I hope she doesn't have to be the one to do it. I think her line about sacrificing one precious life is relevant and like applicable to the situation, obviously. But I don't know if it means that she herself is going to be the one to finish him off.
It's really cool that Don Xabier found those panels, because I had totally forgotten that she does say those words, that sometimes one human life can save a bunch. And, it was a threat to him.
Mm-hmm.
So I had totally forgotten that moment. And I don't necessarily think it's related or foreshadowing, but it's a cool moment. And, the fact that she acknowledged it in trust. I have compliments to Don Xabier for finding that and remembering that had happened, because I'd forgotten.
The idea of Eren dying by Mikasa is kind of, it's tragic, but also makes sense poetically, if that makes sense. Because, Mikasa's kind of a character that's been so attached to Eren that the idea of her being the one to end Eren's life would be the ultimate kind of way of showing her character evolution. But I think it's a bit, it depends how it's executed, but it seems a bit too on the nose and a bit too dramatic when it could be done in a more interesting way.
Well, at first I thought it would be quite cruel as well, but then I remember chapter 112, and I was like, well, maybe Eren told her that he hated her to make it easier on her. Like, maybe if she really believed that, she would be okay.
Yeah, I think
afterwards. So maybe he has.
I think that was his hope.
Future. Yeah, so that would make sense if he. Well, it could still be that, she is somehow involved in his death, and he wants to ease her pain in that sense, that she was involved in that. Doesn't mean she has to be the one to actually kill him.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with what you will have said, that just sitting back and letting it happen would be enough. That would be the character arc right there. And as angry as I am at him, the thought of that happening, I don't want it.
Yeah, it's really dark.
I want Top Jujitsu to work, please.
Wrong manga.
Now that's the one thing that I would say is impossible. Anything is possible except that.
It is. I know that, but this is going to happen. Somebody, one side or the other is going to win, and it's just awful.
Surely someone can just find the right combination of words, they'll pull it off somehow, just rub their minds together, think of something. Just tell Eren you're not actually free if you do this, and he'll just stop.
Exactly. Armin will fix this. He will be the one to save humanity. Top Jujitsu will happen. Eren will climb out of this puppet skeleton Tyrannosaurus thingy, and all will be happy.
You're kind of, this entire thing, kind of cringe, and you're not free. So just stop it. We'll have a beer. Just, chill out.
We have a couple asks about Zeke's role moving forward. I know I personally don't have any theories on that. I can't imagine you guys do, except
as far as his role, I hope he's still alive. It might be that his physical body has died, but he's still in the past realm, just like Eren and Ymir disappeared, and Zeke is like, oh shit, I'm still here. What do I do? Or maybe, he's still alive in a physical body. I don't know. But I would like to see him in the future. I imagine he'll just be like absolutely just down in the dumps. But it'd be interesting to see how Zeke and Levi meeting up again, both in their weakened forms, both kind of defeated in their own ways, and see if they still have even the strength of will to want to kill each other. Be interesting.
It would be bizarre to me if killing Zeke was important anymore. But we'll see Zeke again, I think.
I think so. I hope so.
It'd be really funny if we didn't.
Okay, last question.
So Fabio Tensi asks, I'm so hyped for Soul Madness. I'd like to know what his favorite Attack on Titan chapter is.
Oh, God.
No pressure, Soul.
What, out of all 130 chapters? Oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many good ones, though. If I were to... Actually, I think I do have an answer. Chapter 122, Ymir's backstory. I'd say is my favorite, because as a chapter, it sort of acts as a mini story in of itself. And it does what it sets out to do so well in such a creative way that, you know, I just have to commend it. And the fact that it's just peak Isayama, pretty much, just the way it's drawn, the way how he can get his point across just so concisely through the artwork in a kind of abstract way. The fact that it's a story in of itself that, you know, concisely shows the backstory of Ymir and how relevant her life is as a slave is to the bigger themes of the entire narrative as a whole. The ending of it, just the climax of Ymir finally giving in to her human temptations after repressing her feelings for 2,000 years. Just it's the most noteworthy chapter for me.
Interesting. That's not one I would have thought that you would pick, but it was a great chapter. What about you, Safflora? I feel like we should ask you as well. What's your favorite chapter?
I was not prepared. Oh, that's so hard. I really like 121 because it blew my brain up. I don't know if that's my favorite. I have a really soft spot for 69. That's Kenny's story about like Kenny and Yuri. I just think his motivation is so unique. I've never seen anything like that from a character in anything else. The like wanting to know what compassion like that is like. That just really struck me because it was so original to me. And it's just such a touching chapter, and I love like Levi's interaction with him. And yeah, I don't know if that's my favorite, but that's the one that's coming to mind right now. So yeah.
All right. Well, I think that finishes up our conversation. I know there was a lot of things that we didn't quite touch on, but this was a huge chapter and a lot to unpack. I'm sure we will be discussing those themes in further podcasts. And Polka this month did not send us a QuickFire. After asking me when we were recording and putting it in his calendar, he did not do it. So we have no QuickFire this month.
The traitor will hang for this.
So I guess this is it. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. I'd really like to thank our guest again, having you guys, Safflora and Sol, and a conversation about Eren. I'm so happy that you were able to rearrange your schedules to join us.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I'm glad we were able to get this to work. So yeah, thanks for coming back. Again, I hope it was as good as the previous times.
It was better.
Sol says at 2 a.m.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Sol thinks we just like him for his opinions, but we're just here for the clout. So
just the clout, yeah. Clout of a Z-list inactive YouTuber. It was fun though. It was fun.
Glad you enjoyed it. I also want to thank our patrons. We have 4, Kenny, Taryn, Simon, and M. Thank you all so much for supporting us. You guys keep this podcast going. Because of you, we're able to distribute it on all the different platforms. So thank you so much. And if you want to join us, you can join us on Patreon for as low as $1. So check our Patreon out. The link will be in the description below. If you want to support us in the other way, you can do that by liking, subscribing, following us on Twitter, or just sharing the podcast with your friends and family. Anything else?
Thank you, Isayama, for creating this masterpiece and radicalizing me into loving genocide. Thank you. Good night.
I feel like thank you, Isayama, that you did not make Eren Yeager my favorite character, because I would not want to be in that position right now.
Oh boy.
I feel bad for you, Erenists. Like, it has got to be brutal each and every month. So if the twist is coming that makes this all worthwhile, or if it just ends, I just hope it ends worthwhile for you.
Me too.
I hope it
sure
ends worthwhile for all of us, because I don't really know how it's gonna end.
We do not.
Eren does.
Does he?
Has he let Isayama know yet?
Okay, well, Thank you for listening to the podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, thank you for offering your hearts and your ears. And until next month, bye.
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 I have never watched Vinland Saga, but I'll watch the crap out of your video.
How about I make a video about how Eren is the father? That'd be so cool.
Oh my God.
Reiner video when?
No.
Wasn't that in the works?
I would disown you. Like, I literally, like, that would be such a deal breaker. Like, okay, no. Well, yeah, it would be. Sorry. I stand by it.